I'm going to call a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Tuesday, December 28, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber, as well as via Zoom teleconference. Prayer will be offered by City Clerk Susan Lovering, and Alderman-at-Large Brandon Laws will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To join by Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the website for the meeting link and telephone number. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please indicate if participating via Zoom, state why you are not meeting in person, and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
I am participating via Zoom because of health reasons, although it is not COVID related. And there is no one in the room with me.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Tenza.
I am present, participating via Zoom for health reasons, and I am alone.
Alderwoman Lou.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
I'm here.
Alderman Laws.
I'm here participating by Zoom because I'm watching the baby and there's nobody in the room with me other than the baby.
Alderman Cleaver.
Present via Zoom because of health reasons and mobility issues. My daughter is in an adjacent room.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright. Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
You have Shoshana Kelly. I want to call for Alderwoman Kelly again. Alderwoman Kelly, are you on now?
Yes.
You have 8.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
I'm here, I'm alone, and I can hear everyone.
Thank you. You have 8 physically in attendance, and you have 5 participating via Zoom.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the meeting over to the chairman of the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee to conduct the public hearing. Alderman Karen.
Okay. I am not. Okay, we will be holding a public hearing concerning Ordinance 0-21-081 relative to the revision of ward boundaries. Ms. Lovering, would you like to speak on this before we start doing our testimony in favor?
I would. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
City Clerk Sue Lovering, and also joining via Zoom is Julie Chismus, who is the Transportation Analyst and the Long Range Planner for the City of Nashua. And together we did the revisions to the ward boundaries. By brief way of information background, the federal and state law and the city charter require that legislative districts and wards be revised following the 10-year census so that population in each of the city's wards is as equal as circumstances will admit or is as practicable. And the city charter directs the Board of Aldermen to equalize populations to comply with the constitutional requirements. A redistricting plan where overall statewide deviation is less than or equal to 10%. is presumed to be constitutional under the federal constitutional one person, one vote requirement. And criteria is intended to making the drawing of the ward lines easy to identify and understand, and to ensure fairness and consistency. All boundaries of the wards and other boundaries shall follow easily identifiable physical features, including public and private ways, public utility lines, railroad tracks, and surface waterways. So Nashua, like many other cities such as Manchester, waited for the more user-friendly data to be released in mid to late September before redrawing its ward lines. When the census data was released, Ms. Chismas uploaded the data into Excel and GIS. Following the census tracking, she identified the population by ward.
It's not coming out on the computer, on Zoom.
I could hear it. All right, I'll go tell them.
I'm sorry to the clerk if you didn't hear what I was saying. My screen is showing the participants of Zoom, but the share screen is not coming out on the Zoom to the people. So what you're pointing out, I don't think the people at home can see it.
Thank you.
Well,
CTV can see it, but Zoom can't.
I can just continue with, and bring down the slide presentation and just give a brief overview off of my notes. So I just identified the criteria that is used in redrawing of the lines. And Nashua, like many other cities such as Manchester, as I stated, waited for the more user-friendly data to be released, which was in mid to late September before we began withdrawing our lines. When the census data was released, Ms. Chismas uploaded that data into Excel and GIS, and following the census tracking, she identified the populations by ward. The census data showed that Nashua's population rose 5.43% from 86,494 in 2010 to 91,322 in 2020, which results in an ideal population per ward of 10,147. It is also anticipated, based on this data, that Nashua will retain its 27 seats in the House of Representatives. There's 3 seats per ward. Ward populations should fall within the range of deviation for the 3-member state representative district, which is 9,815 to 10,838. But it must not exceed the plus 5% population deviation for the wards, Nashua lines, of 9,640 to 10,654. So the range of deviation falls between 9,815 people to 10,654 per ward. So once we determined our range of deviation, we began the process of redrawing the ward lines following the census tracts, using those easily identifiable physical features to adjust the population to each of our 9 wards to fall within the 10% range of deviation, while giving consideration towards minimizing the number of residents whose polling locations would change. And if the slide was up, it would show that all of our wards have been adjusted to fall within that range of deviation. And we had an interactive map, and Ms. Chismas is online now. I don't know if she will be able to share with you that map and you will be able to view it. And we are happy to answer any questions, but that is a very brief overview of a very long process in redrawing our lines. and I'm happy to answer any questions. Hopefully Ms. Chisness can hear us and she is able to share.
Yes, hi, Julie Chismus, Community Development, Transportation Analyst, and Long Range Planner. I can share my screen if you give me just a second. And this is the interactive map that Ms. Lovering was speaking of. And as you can see, we have the proposed boundaries with the populations within each one displayed. And you can go in and see where the lines are, the boundaries are, and also the areas that changed, highlighted in yellow. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure what anybody would like to see.
And that's a brief overview, Chairman Karen, thank you.
You're welcome. So do we have any questions from members of the Board of Aldermen to either our city clerk, Sue Lovering, or Julie? Alderman Clee.
Thank you. It's not so much a question as just a comment about the interactive aspect that was put up for the board, where you can look at the layers and you can see where the changes are, how many from each one, what ward they came from, and so on. So for those who have questions and so on, I strongly suggest that they use, Ms. Chisholm worked very hard on that, and it's a wonderful tool. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, then Alderman Dowd.
Is there a way that we could get a list of the new names and addresses of the people that have been added to the ward? Added and subtracted, I guess. Or do we have
The
to get
street addresses you're talking about, we don't have the names of these people, it's by streets.
the addresses?
The addresses, Ms. Chisness, I believe, can run that.
Yep.
Can you?
Go ahead, Julie.
If I may speak, thank you. The plan is after the boundaries are approved that we will go through another GIS analysis and be able to drill down and pull all of the addresses, not only the ones that change, but all within the city, so we can have a ward for each address.
Does that help? Thank you. Okay, then let's get started for the public hearing. We'd like to see if anyone within the chamber is going to give testimony in favor. Okay, no one. Okay, do we have anyone on Zoom who is willing to give testimony in favor of this ordinance? Okay, looks like there's no one. Okay, again, looking for testimony in favor. Anyone in the chamber? No one? Anyone on Zoom? Nope. Okay. Testimony in opposition? Okay. No one? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing on ordinance 0-21-081 at 7:15 p.m. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion that we close a public hearing on 021-081.
Via roll call?
Via roll call.
Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dow,
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes.
Oh, Alderman Harry Gafford.
Yes.
I didn't see you come in. Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes, Alderman Gathright arrived at 7:05, Alderman Lopez arrived at 7:14, for the record.
Thank you very much. You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, motion carried, and I declare the meeting adjourned at 7:16 p.m. Thank you.
I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Tuesday, December 28th at 7:30 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference, which meeting link can be found on the agenda and on the city's website. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Susan Lovering, and Alderman Cleaver will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. If you are participating via Zoom, please state your presence, reason for not attending the meeting in person, and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here, I'm alone in this room, and I am attending remotely due to travel.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I am participating via Zoom. I am by myself, and the reason is for health concerns.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Tenza.
I am present, participating via Zoom for health considerations, and I can hear everybody, no one else is in the room with me.
Alderwoman Lou.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
I'm here participating by Zoom. I can't be there because I'm watching my baby and I'm alone in the room.
Alderman Cleaver.
Here participating via Zoom, and that's because of illness and mobility issues, and my daughter's in the adjacent room.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Present.
Alderman Mosher.
I'm here.
We have 10 physically in attendance and 5 participating via Zoom.
Thank you. Also joining us this evening is Mayor Donches and Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton. Mayor, did you wish to address the board this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes. So first, I wanted to update you on the COVID statistics, which we now know have continued to remain at a high level. As of yesterday on the state website, we are significantly into substantial transmission. Therefore, caution, we need to continue to exercise caution. But the measurements are, we are running a 14.6 positivity rate, slightly lower than when we met last time. And in Nashua, 1,170 new cases have arisen per 100,000 population within the last 14 days. Hospitals are under stress, no question about it. The people are working very, very hard. As of yesterday, there were 65 people hospitalized at our 2 hospitals with COVID. That's the highest it's been since we've been meeting with the hospitals almost 2 years ago. We now are meeting weekly. And unfortunately, there are some projections. The University of Washington has been making sort of educated projections regarding the future course of the COVID pandemic since the beginning. And they're projecting a significant spike in February to the point where at least their projections suggest that statewide the demand for intensive care beds will be 75% higher than it is right now, and the same for hospital beds devoted to COVID. The hospitals are now at about capacity, so if this does occur, it will be very problematic. The hospitals are concerned enough that we'll be meeting with them next week to talk about, at least get their thoughts on this and talk about how potentially we could work together to try to deal with it if that unfortunate course of events does come to pass. Hopefully it will not, but people are watching these projections. Next, Madam President, I wanted to thank the city employees for all the work they've done this whole year, worked very hard again during the pandemic. Particularly just recently, our Public Works employees were clearing the streets, doing salting, brining on Christmas Day, actually, when we had some bad weather conditions. So thank you to them and to everyone else for all of your dedication. There are a couple of items on the agenda, Madam President, that I wanted to mention. First, R21203 regarding the acquisition of the parcel adjacent to Greeley Park, the so-called Bartlett Forest. This, I believe, is for the long-term benefit of the city worth acquiring. I equate it to similar to the Pennachuck watershed, which was developed some years ago. And after it happened, everybody in town said, "What? You let that happen? Why would you have allowed the development of the Pennachuck watershed?" Now, this was mostly in the middle 90s, maybe middle and late 90s, but the only recourse that the city could have taken at the time was to try to acquire the property, which did not happen. But in this case, land adjacent to the oldest, and when we had an expert involved, one of the very rare English-style passive parks remaining in New England and in the United States, to have development right up against the edge of the property, to me, would impair the quality of that park. So I hope you'll consider that favorably. Another important ordinance that you have on the agenda, or a piece of business, this one's an ordinance, is the inclusionary zoning ordinance. I know many members of the board have worked on this and been familiar with it as it has evolved and been developed. Matt Sullivan, the planning director, formerly, and the former community development director, Sarah Marchant, Tim Cummings, and a number of members of the board have been working with the conclusions reached when we involved the consultant, and have proposed an ordinance that would require affordable housing according to various criteria in different areas of the city. Inclusionary zoning is important because it requires that some of the units, depending on the formula and where this is occurring, be affordable in every development in the city. This affordable housing issue, of course, is one that we've discussed many times. People are struggling to pay rent, to buy houses. Costs are very high. Rents and property values have gone up tremendously. So this is a very important piece of legislation, and I believe, from what I've heard from all of you, I expect you will approve it, but I just wanted to comment on the favorable impact it would have on the city. I did want to mention to those who will be leaving us, and tonight is the last full meeting of the year, of the term. We've enjoyed having you with us. Being on the Board of Aldermen, serving the city of Nashua, serving our community is truly an honor. It's something I'm sure you've learned a lot about the city government in the course of the time you've been here. Hopefully you won't be strangers, and will continue to be involved in the community in one way or another. But I want to just personally thank you for everything that you've given to the city during the course of your time on the Board of Aldermen, and at least in June's case, as a city employee previous to that. So I wish you all the best. And finally, New Year is a few days away, so hopefully 2022 will be a good year for us. I think the city is doing very well, but of course COVID is storming back now, and hopefully we'll get beyond that and have happy and prosperous 2022. And that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Any response to the remarks of the mayor? Seeing none? Recognition period.
There is none.
Reading minutes of previous meetings. There being no objection, I'll declare the minutes of the special and regular Board of Aldermen meetings of November 13th and December 7th, 2021 be accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
Communications have been received from Matthew Sullivan, Planning Manager, regarding referrals from the Board of Aldermen on proposed resolution R-21-203 relative to authorizing the purchase of property located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, map 57, lot 3, and proposed ordinance O-2173 relative to amending the inclusionary zoning supplemental use regulations. From Donna L. Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, regarding communications received from the public. From Susan Lovering, City Clerk, and Donna Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, regarding proposed ordinance O-2182, requiring legislation and related information to be available. From Shoshana Kelly, Chairwoman of the Work Study Group, relative to Police Commission, regarding the summary report.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. But without objection, I will suspend the rules to allow for a communication that was received from Susan Lovering, City Clerk. It's on your desk this evening.
Communication from Susan K. Lovering, City Clerk, regarding NRO 56 compensation.
Being no objection, I'll accept the communication, place it on file. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. Just a moment. It's okay, thank you. The first person we have is Kathy Lodi. You have a 3-minute period. Would you please give your name and address for the record when you begin? Thank you.
My name is Kathy Lodi, 12 Bartlett Avenue. Good evening, Mayor Donchis and President Wilshire and the rest of the Board of Aldermen. We've been here for weeks now in front of you talking about this resolution and how important it is to the citizens in the city. We've been bullied and harassed, and people have hurled the word NIMBY at us over and over again, like some sort of verbal dagger. I never heard the term before I moved here. My alderman had to explain it to me. And even then I thought, shouldn't we all care what gets blown up or developed in our backyards? And again, against our green space that we pay for? We're not here because we're against any kind of development. And my husband and I are privileged to have our own backyard space. We're here for the people, like I grew up in a mill town, a few hours from here. People who live in apartments and condos and duplexes that don't have a lot of green space and that need a place to escape once in a while. They need a place to walk and clear their head. They need a place to get some physical activity. We want this resolution, a favorable passage of this resolution so that people like a 14-year-old kid who just spent the entire day in school in a mask has a trail to walk through between Manchester and Concord Street. And when you encroach in this space and develop up against it and blast it to smithereens, it does affect the park and it does affect the people who use it. We'll never have this opportunity again. There aren't undeveloped parcels up against the park. This is it. And for your last meeting, you have this amazing opportunity to vote on this. and see how you can add this 13-acre parcel to Greeley Park to be used by all citizens, not just one neighborhood. When acreage is going to be at $1 million an acre very soon, you're gonna look like geniuses when this gets added to the park, because you won't have the opportunity. Thank you to those who have supported this resolution. Thank you to people like Matt Sullivan and Tim Cummings and all the people who helped us understand really what some of the laws were around this. And for those who've been opposed, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk over your concerns and talk about mitigating a lot of those concerns.
Time is up.
I urge you to reconsider and vote yes. Thank you.
Robert Lodi?
Robert Lodi, 12 Bartlett Avenue. That's going to be a tough act to follow. Madam President, members of the Board of Aldermen, Mayor, and other esteemed guests, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I'm here to speak in favor of you passing Resolution R21-202 and R21-203. This is a unique and singular opportunity that will never present itself again. You heard from Alderman Klee tell us the park was originally 160 acres. It's now 125, a death of 1,000 cuts. We have an opportunity here, once in a lifetime, to expand the park by over 10%, a 13-acre addition to the park. There is no other lot like this. Now, there's many reasons I can give you, and you've heard them before, on why this park is important, but it is an economic engine for the city. People are drawn to it. It was, here it was in one of them. Money Magazine 2018 voted Nashua the best place to live in New Hampshire. One of the reasons for that were recreation options. So people come here for the recreation options. TripAdvisor lists Greeley Park as the #2 thing to do in Nashua, New Hampshire. #2. You know what #1 was? Mine Falls. So these outdoor things are things people see. TripAdvisor and other websites like this, that's our welcome mat. This is what people look at when they're coming here. So this is a singular opportunity. This is a great opportunity to do something that will echo down through history. You're not just looking at the people that use the park today. Think over the next 125 years, who will use that? How valuable green space will be as we continue to develop and grow the city. And the last bit, the wooded trail that was out there. You heard former Marine Captain Mark Berrigan speak about how he trained while he was in ROTC. This is an Iraqi war veteran, a true war hero, who grew up and lived in this neighborhood and chose to return home to take care of his family, cares about this place, uses that park. Think about that as you take the vote. And for all of you, even if you may be in opposition, I appreciate your dedication to the city, and I appreciate you being people of honor to take this under consideration. All of those in favor, you know how I feel about you. Thank you for your service.
Bob Keating?
My name is Bob Keating, 5 Coburn Woods, member of the Unitarian Universalist Church and the Social Justice Committee and Granite State Organizing Project. Coming here today, I feel in some sense speaking to the choir because the process on this inclusionary zoning, I'm asking for your support on that, has been to me a wonderful example of a positive process. There was research done to demonstrate what was needed. A second research there, the Board of Aldermen was actively engaged. Matt Sullivan, Tim Cummings, and Sarah Marchant, I think, educated the public. What I think is created here is what we've been wanting to do, is to increase more affordable housing, and for every 10-unit development, more units will be created, or at least money set aside for it. That it will also be done in such a way that will not be a burden to the city or taxpayers. It will not be a burden to the developers because of the set-asides. So it's really, to me, it's sort of like a civics lesson and about how government can work and how a community can move through a particular process. We know this doesn't create, staggering amounts, but it is one more method. And it also sends an extremely positive message about we were willing to tackle an issue to move things along of it. And finally, what we're doing is that we're going to reduce the burden of housing costs for some families. And hopefully that in our upcoming legislation with opera money, we'll be able to do more of that. So I don't think I'm here. I didn't think a message needed to be said, but I wanted to continue the message that for GSOP and many others feel this is good, what has occurred, and I wanted to be part of what I believe will be a yes vote on this all the way through. So thanks again, and Happy New Year to all of you, and we'll miss Linda and Alderman Karen for next year, and I Skip up there, I don't see him, but I miss him, too. And Jan, obviously, for my ward alderman, so care. So thanks again.
I have next Rabbi John Spiricet.
Good evening. And I want to say I'm Jonathan Spiricet, and I live at 39 Coburn Avenue. My best wishes to those of you who are sick and healing, and my thanks to those of you finishing your terms of service, and all of you really for this intense period of service you have been in. I serve as rabbi of Temple Beth Abraham on Raymond Street, and I'm one of the leaders of the Greater Nashua Interfaith Housing Justice Group, and I represented Ward 1 on the Imagine Nashua Master Plan Steering Committee. I'm speaking in support, like Bob, of 021-073, amending the inclusionary zoning supplementary use regulations. I speak as part of a group of religious leaders who meet every 2 weeks on affordable housing. For 2 years, we have been working closely with the Community Development Department, former Director Marchant, Manager Sullivan, as well as Director Cummings and other staff, members of this board, and Mayor Donches. We've been there to advocate at the State House for affordable housing policies that you have sought to help the city innovate and collaborate with developers and secure new funding sources. We've been networking within our congregations, finding members with different connections to housing issues, and networking as clergy with nonprofit and real estate and business communities. There are more of us speaking regularly at your meetings and communicating regularly with you about affordable housing policy than there were a couple of years ago. And behind us are many more in our congregations. You can know that going forward, the work of adding more affordable housing will have many more hands with new skills and perspectives to build not just homes, but more vibrant neighborhoods, and to find and carry through the creative and effective approaches that a city like Nashua is uniquely poised to execute. Your city staff and your committees have set up this end-of-year victory for one step among more to come to make our city a tighter community, where fewer people spend more than they can afford on rent and mortgage, where we are less divided by how much we earn, and where the people who teach our kids and take care of our sick and fight our fires and keep us safe, their whole lives here as residents don't have to just commute here. Because of a more interwoven way of living, we can all see the picture of the city in a more rich way and bring better eyes to the solutions to challenges that we can see better because we'll see them together.
30 seconds.
The proposal in front of you, 021-073, responds to a moral necessity for housing in a way that is practical financially. When you have those opportunities, you have to take them. Next year, we'll work together on the harder parts, and we'll build on tonight's vote and the values you affirm and the partners standing behind it with you, eager to work together with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Sullivan.
Good evening, John Sullivan, 30 Holbrook Drive in Nashua. I'm speaking out tonight, urging the board to reject Resolution 21-202 and 203. Nashua doesn't have an open space problem, we have a housing problem. Reading the city's master plan, under the parks and natural areas goal section, nowhere under the 5 action items listed does it recommend the expansion of Greeley Park. In fact, Greeley Park isn't even mentioned in that portion of the plan. Nashua's master plan advises the following. Protect Pennachuck Brook corridor. Expand planning for Salmon Brook by extending conservation land protection, which is in Ward 9. We sold Camp Touset to a private developer, so I guess we missed the mark on that. Review park inventory to determine how accessible parks are for all residents. Seek funding and build neighborhood parks in areas of the city, and I quote, that are park deficient. This part of town certainly is not park deficient. Nashua's 2020 housing study calls for all levels of housing and puts a number out there of 5,000 units for the city. Thanks to the planning department, I've come upon some numbers. We have 40 units of housing that have either been constructed or are underway. Another 800 new units of housing in various stages of construction. And there are about 500 more in very early stages of approval, but there's no guarantees that those will all be built. Add those all together, conservatively, we are still a long way away from the 5,000 units that we need. If we move forward on this, then we sit around in 5 years and still wonder why we have a housing problem. And you can draw a line from the decisions that we make today as to why we still have that problem. We pay to come up with these studies. Let's follow the guidance in the studies and stay true to it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Leela Spiricet.
Hello, my name is Leela Spiricet. I live at 39 Coburn Avenue. I'm a recent graduate of Nashua High School North and a first-year student at Barnard College. During my last 3 semesters at North, I served as a researcher for the Greater Nashua Interfaith Housing Justice Group. I learned about housing policy both in the U.S. and in our state and city. In response to the request the group got from the city, I created a briefing about affordable housing trust funds that some of you on the board have heard me present. I took part in other meetings in the city and statewide addressing the impact of the pandemic on renters and landlords. As you know, more than 40% of Nashua renters are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing, and almost a third of those who work here cannot afford to live here. The existing state and federal programs for affordable housing are a beginning, but we do not have nearly enough funding sources right now for the scale of our need. Inclusionary zoning, which I found in my research to be a widely used and successful way to increase affordable housing, is one way for city policy, city leaders, and developers to work together in a way that will make more of an impact without financial burdens on the builder, the landlord, or the city. It is important for some of my peers who will move back to Nashua after college, as well as other young people looking for a place to live as they start their careers, to have affordable options for housing. It is also important for any community striving to be dynamic and diverse to not have the cost of housing be a barrier to living here. I hope tonight you will pass O21073 and keep the momentum going for more affordable housing. Thank you.
Next speaker is Paul Metzger.
Yeah, thank you. Paul Metzger, 25 Columbia Ave, Ward 3, speaking in favor of R21-202 and R21-203. First, I'd like to thank all of you, Board of Aldermen, Mr. Mayor, for your service to the city. Even if you don't agree with my position, I respect you and I appreciate what you do. But why do you do it? Why did you agree to serve the city? I expect it's not because you enjoy seeing the underbelly of human nature, hearing all the complaints, receiving threats. So why do it? I expect that part of it is you feel a need to represent your constituents. Part of it may be that you're drawn to fulfilling your civic duty to serve the city. Part of it may be that you feel a sense of stewardship. You want to keep the city going down the right path, fix a few things along the way, and leave it in a better position than you found it for your children and their children. It's this sense of stewardship that I'd like to address tonight. Now, I know that anything I say tonight is unlikely to change the minds of those of you who are opposed to these resolutions, but I'm going to try anyway. So regarding the property at 15 Bartlett Ave, if someone wants to take the front part of the property where the house and lawn is, subdivide that to build a few houses, I don't think that any of us, myself included, would be opposed to that. The part I'm concerned about is the back part of the property, the old growth forest and wetlands. That forest is surrounded on 3 sides by city property. Look at a map, the Barker Forest is essentially a peninsula that juts into Greeley Park. Yes, technically it abuts the park, but I challenge anyone who looks at a map to tell me with a straight face that that property doesn't look like it's already part of a park. Cutting down that forest will forever change the look and feel of the west side of Greeley. You have to represent your constituents, I get it. But how many have spoken in opposition? Tens, maybe 100? Earlier today, I emailed you the spreadsheet with the signatures from the change.org petition imploring you to purchase the property. We currently have the overwhelming support of almost 3,000 people, with 1,300 of those, 1,300, in Nashua, and the majority of those being outside of Ward 3. Now, Alderman Klee has estimated that the annual cost of a 20-year bond to purchase this property is about $158,000. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of Nashua is about 91,000. So we're talking about $1.75 per person. For comparison,
30 seconds.
A small cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, $2.27. So that stewardship thing, what's going to make you prouder? Telling your children and your grandchildren that you saved them the cost of a small cup of coffee, or that you did the right thing and that you personally helped save the forest for them? Thank you. And again, even if you choose to vote no, I thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you. Next, we have Tim.
Hi, my name's Tim Root. I live in 63 Berkeley Street. Longtime resident of Nashua, my entire life. Grew up here with my family, 4 brothers. 3 of us still live in the city. I want to thank the Aldermen for holding this session tonight. I know it's a busy time of year, and I hope you all had a happy holiday and looking forward to a new year. I personally walk Greeley Park all the time. I actually have a plot in the garden down there as well. And so really have a lot of firsthand knowledge of the beauty of the park, as well as see thousands and thousands of people enjoying the space on a regular basis. If any of you have not walked the backside of the park, going by the Barker land, I strongly recommend you do that to get a feel for what we're talking about and how much of that land will change on the backside of Greeley. I think it's really important to see this as a short-term investment, but a long-term opportunity for the city. There aren't properties like this that exist anymore in Nashua. This is a lot of space. There's a lot of things the town could potentially do with it. I think number one, though, is looking for keeping the feel of Greeley and keeping that open space. As was mentioned earlier, really critical. It brings people to Nashua. It's highly recommended, the Greeley Park, for people to go there. And it's just a great experience. I don't know any video stuff. Sorry about that. So a lot of people have mentioned a lot of the reasons. I just wanted to add on to that and hope you strongly in favor of both of these resolutions. I think it's critical for Nashua to think long-term and look at properties like this as something that is not available. Talking about the plan, I agree. The plan probably didn't talk about expanding Greeley because there were no options to expand Greeley. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Nashua to grab this space and then look to do what we want with it to enrich the city over time. So that's all I want to say. Please, thank you for your time, and appreciate your recommendations that the folks on the Aldermen that are in favor of it, and hope those are not. Appreciate the time and listening to the comments.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bob Bourne.
Hi, I'm Bob Bourne, 28 Farley Street, and thank you for the time this evening.
I'm speaking in favor of R 21-203 and 202, the acquisition of the Bartlett forest property. A lot of things have happened since the last meeting, all leading us to tonight's discussion and your ultimate vote. We know that a developer who had the first purchase and sale agreement for the Barker Family Trust has backed out. That's given us a little bit of time to listen more to the community, and I pray to your hearts. We know that there are at least 2 more offers pending on this property, neither of which will be as clean, and I'll put clean in quotes, as the city adding the acreage to Greeley Park. Please don't let this get away. The last time I spoke, I mentioned that there would be many topics to address. There still are, all germane to the community issues. Topics including traffic, water, sewer, environmental, safety, etc. All of which are critical, but tonight I'm going to address our collective responsibility to the greater good of Nashua. As parents, we make decisions about and for our children. Some decisions are difficult because they may result in short-term pain, but ultimately we believe in the positive result. As family members, we do similarly. We defend what needs to be defended. We protect what needs to be protected. We help our families, oftentimes making those difficult decisions. As members of neighborhoods, we do the same thing. We assist in helping our neighbors with the needs of the neighborhood. Neighborhood Watch is a great example of this. As community members, again, we follow suit. We assist, we contribute, we help in any way we can. For that, we are all better off. Greeley Park was given to the larger entity, the city, not to the neighborhood, not to the ward. The result has been spectacular. Mr. Greeley did this not because it was better for him or his family, but for the greater good. It didn't benefit the Greeley children. It didn't benefit the Greeley neighbors. It didn't benefit the lessers of pieces of the Greeley farm. It was purely a benefit to the city and those that enjoy the park and those that will enjoy the park. I'm asking you to put down your guards and your conscience and use your conscience and think about the benefits to the city as a whole.
30 seconds.
To think bigger than just the impact on you individually, your family, your neighborhood, your ward, your larger community. The city wins with your decision to purchase the parcel. I've heard, or you will hear, about many topics that are critical to the issues developing the Barker property. You've been given a gift during this holiday season. The gift will allow you to cement an enduring legacy to continue to stabilize and grow the environment in and around Greeley
Time is
Park.
up.
Perhaps one day this park will be up against the original size and grandeur of Mr. Greeley's selfless gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Christie Basada.
Thank you. My name is Reverend Christie Basada. I live at 12 Nutmeg Drive in Nashua, Ward 9. I am also one of the pastors at Main Street United Methodist Church, and I represent the Nashua Interfaith Housing Justice Team and also Granite State Organizing Project this evening. I first want to say thank you, as I have said many times before, for your work on inclusionary zoning. This amendment is going to be very important in ensuring that the people who live and work in Nashua, particularly singles starting at about $56,000 up to households of 4 making about $109,000, will have places that they can afford to live. Having been a housing justice worker in this city for years, however, I am aware that there are many other struggling households, 40% of renters, in fact, as Leela has so eloquently said, who are still rent burdened and are struggling to continue to live here. The housing study was referenced by Mr. Sullivan, and the 5,000 unit need is extremely strong. And so I want to call the Board of Aldermen to a moment of accountability. It is clear to me that the city government is willing to go into significant debt to protect and enhance the experiences of our middle class to more affluent residents through debt for performing arts centers, for park enhancements. And I'm not here to argue with those choices at all, but I would like to ask the board, as well as the Bartlett neighbors who speak about caring for the whole community, to be accountable and to join us in working toward housing that all Nashuans can afford. I am here to remind you that we have $16 million of American Rescue Plan money coming into this city that has not yet been designated for being expended. And I'm asking the board to consider being accountable to the goals of the master plan, to the goals of the housing study, and to designate the majority of that money to affordable housing, be it through special projects or the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that still needs to be fleshed out. I thank you so much for hearing me this evening, and I ask you again to support inclusionary zoning in its current form fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Francis Murphy.
Good evening. My name's Francis Murphy. I want to make sure I can be heard. Yes. Thank you. I speak to urge the board to move forward on the purchase of the Barker property on Bartlett Street so it can be integrated into Greeley Park.
Your address, please?
72 Berkeley Street. Thank you. I'm here speaking in my private capacity, but I'm also the president of the Friends of Greeley Park, and as well as chairman of a group formed under state law, the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee. Our task is to advocate for all good things related to the river. There's been reference to the master plan. My main purpose and point is to state that the purchase of the Bartlett Street property is entirely consistent with the city's master plan. Indeed, if the city were not to move forward with the purchase of the property, it would be contrary to the spirit and dictates of the master plan. I'm going to attempt to pull up a portion of the master plan on a screen share. If I can do this, let's see where are we? Looks like I haven't got it up there. So that's not working. I'm going to read from the master plan. On objective 2, the master plan states the goal is for open space, scenic areas, passive recreation. The city should strive to provide all residents of the city with adequate and accessible recreational space. The specific recommendation B says is to protect and set aside open space areas in each of the city's quadrants wherever possible. Aspiration recommendation F is acquire additional open space areas. And then finally, for my point, recommendation G is to amend site plans such that clear cutting or near clear cutting of vegetation should be prohibited. The plan that was put forward was to create 40 housing units over 55.
30 seconds.
And that would have been involving clear cutting of most of the 13 acres. So I urge the purchase of the property as it is entirely consistent with the master plan. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, could you take down your screen share? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Lori Ortolano.
Hi, good evening. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Happy almost New Year. I wanted to give my support to the Affordable Housing Inclusionary Zoning Amendment, and I believe the board is going to back that tonight. I think that's a move in the right direction. I hope we do some good monitoring of that program, and if adjustments need to be made to it, that we move accordingly to make those adjustments. I'd also like to speak regarding the Bartlett Street property. I think there were some good points raised from individuals, John Sullivan and another individual reading the housing issue and the housing shortage. I do think that, you're looking at creating housing versus preservation of land, and it's a competing issue here. I see a lot of spending going on in this city. I see a mayor who's very liberal at his spending, and I don't see a lot of solutions in place as to how we're going to afford what is being spent. So That concerns me and continues to concern me. So the board's gonna do what the board's gonna do, but I'm watching what's going on here. Also, third item, you have a lot of letters in your packet regarding the mask mandate that was put in place. I asked Donna Graham to please provide me with any additional letters that didn't make it into the packet. Your packet had, I believe, 29 letters, but there were an additional 33 letters that didn't go in because they were not addressed properly with a full address to be counted. And I think when you look at, I hope all board members got all of those letters, because when you look at those letters, I was pretty surprised to see the lack of support for the mask mandate on the level that I saw.
We're not going to be acting upon that this evening. Ms. Ortolano, could you stick to items we're going to be acting upon?
Well, they are the items you read into the record, and you've allowed me to do this before. So they were acknowledged. And so there were 42 people who were opposed to it and 21 people in support of the mandate. So I hope that one individual or several individuals on the board asked for a weekly update on the numbers and a weekly briefing be given to the board. I don't see that that's on the agenda tonight, but I would like you to pay attention to that, because I think you don't have that support because people are not buying into what you're stating. And I think your Board of Health was very misleading in what they gave to the board.
30 seconds.
We're all concerned about the load on the hospitals. However, these are regional hospitals that support patients from all over the area, communities that sum up, that are more population than the city of Nashua. We shouldn't assume that it's only Nashuans that are filling the hospital beds. It's a misrepresentation. I expect more from our Board of Health when it comes to data, and I think they fell woefully short. Thank you.
I have John Ferreira. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Penny Ferreira. I'm on John's computer, and we live at 3 Birchwood Drive in Nashua, New Hampshire. And thank you for letting me speak again, and I hope all of you had a really safe and blessed holiday with your families. And thank you for all the work that you do, because this has been a learning curve for me, and God bless you all. So I had a wonderful exchange with Mr. O'Brien this afternoon. He's not only a dapper dresser, but he's a good debater. And I told him I was going to do a pros and cons, and many of my neighbors have stated some of the facts that I wanted to. One of the comments, though, that John Sullivan stated, respectfully, John, if you look on page 178 of the master plan, the main goal says recreation and open space to expand and enhance existing open spaces, to balance the protection of Nashua's environmental assets with the opportunities for redevelopment. And Fran Murphy spoke so eloquently about the opportunity for this. He also educated me about the spring that is underneath this property. And I heard from another neighbor too, that the land, the Barker land, is kind of moist because of that spring. And the only thing that's keeping it from flooding are those trees. There's also a commitment, I know, from Alderman Curry that you are passionate about climate control. And this is a perfect opportunity to do that, to follow the master plan and to check off a huge win for climate control. Mr. O'Brien, you said that there were other wards that said they don't have the green space as big as Greeley. Well, they may not have had the opportunity because of how their area is built. But the southern quadrant is slated for the most opportunity for building. And it's also in your master plan that you will work with developers coming in to develop more green space. So they have an opportunity to get their green space, maybe not as big as Greeley, but that can also be on the added expense of the builder. And I know that our economic developer, Tim Cummings and Matt Sullivan, will do a good job at making sure that that happens. There are other wards like Ward 1 with Jan Smith. You said that you would love to save the green. You would love to save the green space, but you didn't hear it from your constituents. I have friends that live in your area. I hope you got more emails this year stating that there are people in your area that use Greeley and would gladly pay a higher tax Karen, you also lost property in your area, but again, it's a city park, so you have an opportunity to save this land for the entire city. And even though you
Your
are
time
at
is up.
large. Okay, thank you, I really appreciate it. I'll come back.
Our next speaker is Alex Como.
Yes, thank you. Alex Como for Lewis Street. I'd like to begin by thanking the 7 outgoing members of the board, Alderwoman Karen, Alderwoman Harry Cathray, Alderwoman Lou, Alderman Cleaver, Alderwoman Schmidt, Alderman Tenza, and Alderman Cleaver. Thank you for your service to the city of Nashua. I speak for a lot of people in my neighborhood when we thank you for everything you've done for us. I'd like to speak tonight against R21-202 and R21-203. I keep hearing mentions of save our park and protect our park, but just to be clear, I love Greeley Park myself. Development of this property would not have a negative impact on the existing services and amenities provided by Greeley Park. New housing would not result in the loss of the horseshoe pits or softball fields or demolition of the sensory garden. It's not going to result in the removal of walking trails. All of these things that everybody loves about Greeley Park will still be there, whether we buy this property or not. I spend a lot of time in Mine Falls using the trails for walking and biking. I've hosted many of my kids' birthday parties in the picnic areas of Greeley, and I'm an avid softball player that makes frequent use of the softball fields. If there was any chance that this development would negatively impact the use of the park, I'd be the first to stand against it. But the fact is that's not really the case. I am very sympathetic to the people who've spoken tonight against the development of their neighborhood. I don't blame them for that. If I lived on Bartlett Ave or Maywood Drive, I wouldn't want new development in my backyard either. But the difference is, there is a difference in being opposed to new construction in your neighborhood and demanding that the city government fork over $2.5 million to interfere with a private land deal. We as citizens should not expect the city to go around buying up every property that somebody wants to develop. Every time a needed project comes up in the city, we're told that there's no funding. I recently spoke with DPW about the possibility of sidewalks along Lund Road, which is a very busy street that children use to walk to school at Fairgrounds Elementary and Fairgrounds Middle School, as well as Bishop Burton High School. It was estimated that it would cost around $1 million to undertake such a project, and I was told there's no money in the budget. So it's disappointing to know that there isn't $1 million to build a sidewalk for school children, but there are people who think we should spend nearly 3 times that to protect people's scenery. A major problem that occurs in this city far too often is that too many people think that we can pay for everything we want to do without restriction. The sad reality is that we can't pay for everything that we want. And it's unfortunate that things like a performing arts center, boardwalks and parks along the river, and potentially interference in a private land sale to protect people's backyards can be pushed forward at the cost of multiple tens of millions of dollars while kids have to walk in the street to get to school. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Vigiano.
Thank you. My name is Michael Vigiano from 35 Columbia Avenue. I want to speak in favor of the 2 resolutions. And I had a tremendous presentation ready, but my predecessors have already covered almost everything I want to say. But I do want to thank the mayor for his perspective on this. Thank you, Mayor Donches. That was well put. I agree with you. Through the miracle of technology, I'm actually speaking to you tonight from just outside of Red Rocks, Colorado. My wife and I are visiting our daughter out here, and anybody who's been here is amazed by the open space that's available. The amount of people who exercise, the amount of people who get outside, the amount of people who do everything they can to be outside almost all the time, including my daughter and husband who live here. Another state park as well. Anything like what we're talking about here tonight, Nashua, here in Colorado would be unheard of because open space is what people want. I think we have heard a very good number of pros and cons about this project, but favoring developing this land with housing, which really, by the way, is not affordable housing, is really off the mark. So thank you to those who spoke before me. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Richardson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Dan Richardson, 70 Berkeley Street. I just want to make a few points. Part of the purpose of having a city park is it's a relief for mental exhaustion, actually. It's just so relaxing to go out and to take a walk out off the trails through the park. And it's a very important part of the therapy of developing mental health. That's one of the things that hadn't been said before, so I wanted to get that out there. The other thing is that you'll have to pass both of these resolutions tonight for preservation of that 13 acres as part of Greeley Park. Because a lot of people don't know that at the end of a legislative term, which will be in the next few days, that all the legislation which has not yet been approved dies where it is, on the table or in committee. So there's no second chance. Tonight is the night. It needs to be decided now. Thank you very much.
That looks like the end of our speakers for the evening, or for this public comment period. Communications requiring final approval.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding multi-year contract for software subscription.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Sorry.
Laura Cajon.
We've already closed public comment.
Well, I kept on saying Laura Cajon and nobody picked up.
No one heard you.
Okay, which one is it? I apologize.
Page 2, the communications requiring final approval.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, I motion to accept and place on file and approve a new 3-year subscription with Workday Adaptive Planning for 20 licensed seats and approval of a professional services agreement during the first year to assist with training and implementation in an amount not to exceed $323,780. Funding be through Department 126 Financial Services Fund 71228 Computer Software Escrow Funds from Information Technology, $299,140, and escrow funds from school, $24,640 by roll call.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
That motion carries.
Communication has been received from Susan Lovering, City Clerk, regarding NRO 56 compensation.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to recommend indefinitely postponed by roll call.
Motion is to indefinitely postpone. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Abstain.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
No.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Abstain.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes.
Point of order?
Alderman Lowe.
I don't believe you can abstain from a vote if you're at the meeting.
Attorney Bolton.
I'm aware of no such requirement.
You have 12 in favor, 1 against, and 2 abstentions.
That motion carries.
Communication has been received from Steve Bolton, Corporation Counsel, regarding confidential attorney-client communication.
Alderman O'Brien. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make the motion to authorize Mayor Donches to execute Exhibit K for the purpose therein contained by roll call.
Motion, you've heard the motion. Is there discussion on the motion? Alderwoman Lou.
Yeah, I won't be able to support this. This is a contract that we received today at afternoon, and I would, I'd have to vote against it today. It seems to me it could be sent to committee, well, re-entered next year so that it could be properly viewed. Thank you.
Heard the motion. Is there more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Attorney Bolton.
I sent it more than a week ago.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's been, but it got sent to by me to the entire Board of Aldermen more than a week ago. The settlement of the litigation is contingent upon our giving a response by January 2nd. So it is just incorrect. And there's plenty of time next year to deal with it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
No.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
You have 14 yeas and 1 nay.
and that motion carries. Petitions,
There are none.
nominations, appointments, and elections.
None.
Reports of committees. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the December 1st, 2021 Finance Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 2nd, 2021 Work Study Group relative to the Police Commission be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 6th, 2021 Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the December 7th, 2021 Budget Review Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the December 8th Committee on Infrastructure be accepted and placed on file. You might have said that twice. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the December 13th, 2021 Human Affairs Committee be accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of Board of Aldermen appointments.
There is none.
Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution R21-202, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $2,500,000 to purchase property abutting Greeley Park located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, map 57, lot 3.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table R21-202 by roll call. I'd like to speak to it.
Alderman,
Oh, sorry,
it's
can't
not,
speak
it's
to
not
it.
debatable.
Sorry, good.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
No.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
No.
Alderman Lopez.
No.
Alderman Tenza.
Abstain.
Alderwoman Lou.
Could I ask a parliamentary question?
Nope.
This motion is not debatable. You can't ask questions.
Okay, I don't want to debate it. I want to understand. All right. Can't ask a question.
You're gonna vote no?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
No.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
No.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes.
You have 9 yes and 5 nays and 1 abstention.
That motion carries. Resolution 21-202 is declared duly adopted.
Table.
Tabled, I'm sorry, tabled.
Second reading of R 21-203, authorizing the purchase of property located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, map 57, lot 3.
Madam President,
Alderman Clemmons.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion for final passage,
The motion
and I'd like to
is
speak to that.
Alderman Clemmons.
This particular.
Thank you. So, the reason I know that we just tabled the other legislation regarding this, which I believe was the bond, but this legislation here would allow us to authorize the purchase. And so what it would do, in effect, is allow us to enter into a negotiation and figure out the funding source later, which has a couple of beneficial factors to it. One of which is that we could potentially split up that property. There is a house on it now, and that house could be sold, as it stands, and put back onto the tax rolls after, we purchased the property. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, but we can't do them unless we authorize us to at least negotiate or purchase this property. I also think that by passing this, it will allow us to look at different options for funding as well. And the new Board of Aldermen would be able to have that discussion. So I think for a lot of different reasons, that's why I would recommend that we move forward with this resolution. Thank you.
Alderman Clee.
I think Alderman Clemmons spoke very well, and I appreciate all the things he said, and I agree with him. The first was, in my opinion, 202 was basically getting pre-qualified for a mortgage. That's what I've always been saying all along. The second one, 203, does stand on its own, and it does. It gives us negotiating power. The thing that should be noted is that the original, and I think it was stated by one of the speakers, the original developer has stepped aside. It still does not mean that the current owners or trustees of the property are going to sell it to us, but it gives us that opportunity to speak to them, to negotiate a deal, to work with them. And as Alderman Clemmons pointed out, what it does is it gives us that ability, and I think we should consider this. I know there have been, we've all gotten the emails. We've gotten a lot of emails from Ward 3. We've got a lot of emails from other wards. Email-wise, I can't say we got more from one or the other because we all got individual emails as well as collective emails. Our boxes are filling with them. But I do want to say is that there are things that can be done, whether it's we save the forest area of it and a developer put some small homes on the other. That is something that we'd have to cross that bridge, but we can't even get there without at least having authorization for the mayor and so on to make the purchase, to have this discussion and so on. And I think that this discussion is extremely important. I have a lot more that I want to say, but I think I'd like to hear from my fellow colleagues, so thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, first, before I have some comments, I have a question for Corporation Counsel.
The way this resolution is worded, it's giving the mayor authorization to purchase the property. Can you enter into a purchase and sale or any kind of agreement with someone if you don't have funding to get into that agreement? The city's good for it. We would owe the money. If an agreement is entered into with authorization, this provides the authorization.
So you're saying he has a blank check?
I'm not saying anything.
He's gonna
I'm
have to
saying.
But he would
that-
have to come back to the board.
I'm not
and-
arguing with you, sir. You asked me a question, I answered it as best I could. You want to characterize it as a blank check. I never said that.
Madam President, I could offer some insight into that.
Can everyone hold on a second? I'd like to hear from the mayor first.
If there were an agreement, it would have to be contingent upon the Board of Aldermen providing funding. I mean, I'm not going to commit the city to a purchase, nor do I think I really legally could, without the authorization to spend the money. So, as Alderman Clemens said, you know, there's a lot of things that could be worked out. There are people who are at least looking at the house, kind of interested. So who knows what could happen, but, you know, I don't want to disagree with Attorney Bolton at all, but I don't know that I have authority to enter an agreement without a contingency on the funding, and I would never do so even if I did, so.
Do you want to continue, Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to, what I was trying to say was, I think the wording of the current resolution is not the wording that it should have to be what we want to do, but the reason we tabled the bond is because at the Budget Committee, there are a lot of questions still hanging out there relative to the purchase of this property. And there's also a lot of questions relative to the additional expenses that would have to be if we acquired the property, which haven't been resolved. And I think we'd like an opportunity to do that. I also think that perhaps with this kind of acquisition, that we should probably wait for the new board. Having said that, I've got a lot of communication from other people in Nashua, from other wards, that there are pieces of property being sold for development that these people don't want developed, and they say, if we're buying the Barker property, why aren't we buying this property and that property? And where does it stop? You know, I fully appreciate the people and their respect for Greeley Park. And, you know, my grandfather was involved in a lot of the development of Greeley Park back in the day, 80, 90 years ago. And so I'm not against Greeley Park or any part of Greeley Park. I just think that we have a lot of questions that need to be resolved, and we haven't resolved them yet. And I think that we need to know these before we make any commitments. So, you know, $2 million could turn into a substantially higher number in the end. We don't know that. And many of the most serious concerns brought up by the people that are asking for us to buy the property are things that can be resolved at the planning board. That's where most of these things would get ironed out. Traffic, you know, utilities, all of that stuff. So I just cannot support that property purchase at this time.
Could I ask the gentleman in the back of the room to put his mask on? Or you'll have to leave the chamber if you continue to be here without a mask. Thank you. Alderman Clemens?
He's muted.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to state, and I apologize for interrupting, I was trying to help. But what I wanted to say was that any purchase, and this is, I mean, any real estate person will tell you that, you know, almost 100%, I would say 99% of all contracts that someone signs to purchase property, usually they say subject to financing. You know, and that would be true if some sort of an agreement were to be made for the Barker property. So the way that Alderman Clee was describing it as the other ordinance being a pre-approval for a mortgage is exactly sort of the way this is. So what this is basically us saying, please go to the city, please go and see what you can come back with. And I don't see anything wrong with doing that. But that was just the point I was trying to make. So this doesn't commit us to anything, but it does allow us to at least explore and get some of the answers that Alderman Dowd or some of the others may have. Thank you.
Alvin Lopez.
Based on the descriptions that are given here, it seems somewhat obvious that, well, the price could go up if the mayor is intending to fund this and does identify the opportunity to reach an agreement. Price could also go down if other funding sources beyond the bond alone were identified. I know a number of the public speakers who came in previous weeks had indicated they would fundraise for it and that they were looking at grant possibilities too. So I thought we should probably, in fairness, point out both sides of that. That it's not automatically going to go up. Mayor Donchis, to my knowledge, doesn't generally write blank checks or negotiate huge expenses for the city. I think if we're just going to focus on authorizing the city to purchase it, that opens the dialogue. And even tonight, some opportunities to raise revenue, such as selling that house, were included in discussion already.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I agree with my fellow Alderman Dowd. I received some phone calls concerning purchasing this piece of property. One is Camp Doucette. Several people who I know live in that area and said, why didn't you buy that? That's near a conservation land. But my biggest concern is the people who own this property, did they even come to the city to ask them if they thought we would be interested in buying it since it's so close to Grilly Park? You know, it's almost like we're forcing their hand that they should be selling it to us and nobody else. And I don't think that's fair to them. This doesn't really affect Grilly Park in the long run. Yes, you don't want to have a lot of buildings, but Grilly Park is there. We've done a lot of work over there. We've made changes. We also tried to put some changes in there, and they were fought hard. But I don't think this is the time for us to do it. And as Alderman Dowd said, maybe this should wait until the new board comes in and the questions that are out there are answered. But I think we're doing a disservice to this property owner who's trying to sell this property. And if the developer, that first purchaser, has backed out, is it because of all of this? And that's not fair to them either. So I will not support this at this point in time. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie.
So I have a...
I'm going to show my hands up as well. I'm not sure if I'm off the screen.
Okay.
I have a question to legal counsel through you, if I could. Am I mistaken, but you know, it seems to me that in the past, the city has, you know, whether it's the mayor or the planning department or the Board of Public Works or, you know, some other entity in the city other than the Board of Aldermen has, you know, oftentimes, you know, found a piece of property that they want for whatever purpose, determined whether or not the seller was interested in selling, kind of looked at, the possibilities of, whether this would be suitable for whatever purpose, entered into some negotiations you know, you come back seeking authorization from the Board of Aldermen after they've, you know, reached some kind of an agreement contingent upon it being approved and funded by the Board of Aldermen. It seems here that we're saying that before, whether it's the mayor or the planning department or anybody else can look into this property and the suitability of this property for use by the city, it seems like we're saying before anything can happen, the Board of Aldermen has to initially authorize that negotiation and even put down a not to exceed number of $2,500,000. It seems to me that, you know, it could be done that way, but it also seems to me that, you know, that the mayor or somebody could approach the seller and see whether or not there's any interest in selling it to us, and also, you know, you know, determine whether or not this is the, you know, the best use of that property, whether it's suitable for, you know, whatever purposes we might have in mind. So I don't know if you understand my question, Corporation Counsel, but you know, could the mayor or could someone from the city, you know, begin this negotiation without our authorizing the purchase first?
Attorney Bolton?
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be done this way. But in this case, an alderman asked that this resolution be prepared, and that's what was done. But the fact is, any transaction of real property, whether the city is acquiring it or divesting it, has to be authorized by the Board of Aldermen before it can happen. So the original concept, light bulb going off, could happen in any number of places, but eventually it has to get here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering my question. So could I continue?
Yes.
So I think, you know, I have a lot of difficulty with this. I'm torn. You know, I'm on the Conservation Commission. I'm in tune with conservation, and the opportunity to acquire property, you know, green space, you know, seems like you know, a thing that I should be in favor of and that I would like to do. What bothers me about this whole thing is that you know, it seems like well, you know, it clearly was a reaction to news that this property was being sold to a developer, and the neighborhood you know, reacted, and you know, has you know, Alderwoman Clee has, you know, has been a great advocate for, you know, the position of, you know, taking advantage of the opportunity to purchase this property. But you know, from a planning point of view, it doesn't seem that we have really, you know, put in what I think is an appropriate amount of study. You know, the petition that was referred to by one of the speakers, talking about over, you know, 2,000 signatures. I looked at the petition, and the petition is entitled "Stop Thorndike from Raising Barker Forest to Build a Housing Development in Greeley Park." You know, I think that a lot of the people who signed this petition, you know, really don't understand, you know, what was being done here. And the petition, you know, asked to stop this purchase so that the mayor can do a study for the highest and best use of the property. It's, you know, it seems like from a planning point of view, we ought to look into that. What is the highest and best use of this property? And has an appraisal been done? And you know, somebody told me that that they could not determine what the purchase price was by, you know, Thorndike offered, that the seller refused to tell them. So where does this 2.5 million come from? The property is assessed at $1 million. You know, why is it worth 2.5 million? I don't know, maybe it is. But has an appraisal been done? Do we know what the true value of this property is as, you know, open green space? You know, open green space is very valuable, so maybe it is worth that much. I don't know, but I would like to see. I think we ought to get it appraised. You know, we ought to find out what an appropriate purchase price might be, and I think that you know, we ought to spend some time, you know, studying whether you know, this is the highest and best use of that property. You know, there's a conflict here. I like the green space. I'd like to preserve green space, but we also, this is private property. Greeley Park has been there a long time. It has, you know, there's a lot of other land in Greeley Park that is undeveloped. And you know, it might be a good idea, but I feel like we're, you know, we've moved ahead, and I know it was because of this pending sale, but now that pending sale apparently is no longer happening, you know, maybe we've got more time to look into this further. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to mention that this was heard at the Planning and Economic Development Committee last week. It did pass with a favorable recommendation. We also received word that it passed, the Planning Board also gave it a favorable recommendation. The other piece that I just wanted to mention, I did abstain from the bond vote, even though it was the table. I will also have to abstain from the vote on this piece of legislation, just due to a professional relationship that I have in my law office with another attorney who's worked on the project. I don't think it would be fair to either side to take a public position, so I will be abstaining on this vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, President Wilshire. Actually, Alderman Jetty asked the question that I was going to ask, which was just that in the past we had offered support or general, you know, feelings of, you know, go and figure it out to Director Cummings, et cetera, in the past. And I was just wondering why it was in a formal ordinance with a purchase price when it's kind of at this point made up. So.
Alderman Clay?
I think Alderman Schmidt had her hand up first, but.
Oh, Alderman Schmidt, I'm sorry.
That's okay. First of all, I don't think we can actually go in and assess the property for its purpose without having given some approval somewhere. I think that has to start with our approval here. I couldn't vote for 202 because I don't think my vote to indebt the city would be value at this point. It belongs to the next set of aldermen, and I'm glad that they'll be looking at this. The seller needs to know that the city is interested in this, that they are actually not just talking about it, not just doing petitions, not just a few people being angry or about it. We really need to let the seller know that this is something the city would be very interested in. And as Alderman Lopez said, you know, in the past, people who have owned property like this, they've actually given their property to the city for $1 that kind of thing does happen, and if this is that valuable to this city, there's no reason why we can't give the mayor the right to at least negotiate or speak with some authority on the issue. I did not receive a lot of comments on this. I received one that said no, and I received one that said yes. So I think the discussion needs to be there. We shouldn't shut it down, and we certainly can't wait. If this is going to go, it's going to go, and we have to have a say in what happens. In that case, what I'll do is I will vote yes on this because, as someone who said earlier, I'd like to look like a genius on this, and I think that that's a value. Thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Alderman Schmidt. Even if you voted no, you still look like a genius. But thank you. I'd like to kind of address some of the concerns. 203, I'm sorry, 202 was tabled without discussion at the budget committee, and I understood the reason for it. We didn't have at that point, I believe the developer said that he wasn't going to back out. Since then, he has said he is going to back out. So that being said, there was no discussion at the budget committee because, like here, it was tabled without discussion. So just want to get that out on the table. Why push this as quickly as we did? The main reason for pushing it as quickly as we did was because there was that pending. And truthfully, I probably would not have necessarily come forward once all of that had started, except the developer at that time stood in front of about 50 people at least in my ward, in Hunt Memorial, and he very, very openly said, if the city is interested in buying this, I will step away. He said that. I spoke to Director Cummings. I said to Director Cummings, what do I have to do to move this forward? We needed to come up with a figure for a bond, so he spoke to the developer. We also told the developer that if we did purchase it, he had already put out some money, that we would try to keep him whole. He would have to show and prove exactly what it was that he had put out, and if it was justifiable, we would include it. Based on the price that he spoke to Director Cummings about, and that, we came up with the $2.5 million. This was why and how we came up with that number. I didn't pull it out of the air. I didn't go and get an assessment. I didn't do anything. It has real backing. That's why we came up with that money. We're kidding ourselves if we don't think that there are other developers waiting in the wings. Every good business person is going to have someone there that's going to want to do it. If the city does not show that they're willing to negotiate in good faith, if they won't show that we give the mayor the authorization to at least talk to him, and yes, we've done this without having approved here at the board, and then we scramble. And that's what we do. We approve the bond way too often without proving the authorization. And that's why I put both of them in at the same time. It was so that we didn't have to say, okay, well, we got this bond, now we're gonna get approval. They go hand in glove, but they can be separated. It's a done deal as far as the 202 and the 2.5, but that doesn't mean that we can't have the mayor sit and negotiate. And let's think of us as individuals selling our home. Wouldn't you prefer, number one, is the person who comes and talks to you, I'd love to know that they've already been pre-approved for whatever amount of money we're gonna negotiate. And I'd like to know that they have the ability and the will to be able to negotiate. So why would I waste my time? I can't speak to the family, and the letter that came from the developer didn't speak to the family either. He basically said that he was willing to walk away. He said, you need housing, you need green space. He was a man of his word. And I truly, truly appreciate everything he said and what he did. I wrote notes as everybody was talking, so I apologize if I'm kind of like scrambling and looking at things. I know one of the things where, and I agree with Alderman Jetty had said, I saw the in Greeley Park. I saw the signs that said in Greeley Park. And if you've noticed, every single time I speak, I say it is not in Greeley Park. It abuts Greeley Park. And I've made that very, very clear. And I've made it very clear to the people who went out and spoke to it as being inside Greeley Park. I said to them, if you do that, people are gonna stop trusting you. You have to be honest and you have to be transparent. So I think in their zeal, being very, very passionate about it, they looked at it as, and I think someone actually described it as, when you look at the whole thing, it looks like it's in it. I often, and I know it kind of sounds disgusting, refer to it as being in the armpit of Greeley Park. Because there's this big, huge portion over here, and there's a little piece that comes a little back, kind of towards the net. It goes up to Columbia. So as far as Camp Doucette and other areas that we haven't saved, I'm sorry that we didn't save Camp Doucette. It probably would have been a very good property to save. And I agree, we cannot purchase every green space in the city. This one is a little different. This one truly is going to affect, and it's a piece of a puzzle that fits right in there. And that's why I'm disappointed that 202 went down, but it is what it is, and it's the will of the board. And I will abide by it, even if this one goes down too. But I'd like you to think long and hard to give permission, and I don't believe it is a blank check. I think it's a negotiation tool where the family or whoever it is that's going to be working with the mayor and economic development has that ability, they have that backing. It's a little bit stronger than just to say, if I can get as it is, they gotta say if I can get the money, that's still gotta be put in there, but at least they know it's the will of the board and so on, that it's worth negotiating over. If they came back and said 5 million or 1.5 million, it's gonna be different, and the next board will have to talk about that and look at it, so. It was spoken about that it would not have a negative impact. I think one of the soon-to-be aldermen referred to it as would not have a negative impact. Everything will still be there. I would disagree with that. I think it will have a negative impact. If you get rid of the Barker Forest, which is truly part of the tree line, you're going to affect the trees that are sitting in Greeley Park. That just makes common sense. So I do believe it would have an impact. Whether it's going to be separated or, and the lower portion where the home is and so on has a different aspect, I think that's something that the city has to look at as a whole. We did move very fast on this. I did file this legislation literally, I believe it was on a Wednesday that he spoke, and by Friday, I was contacting legal to put something in. And over that day, I believe that Director Cummings spoke to the developer and said we were looking at it. He asked to have the weekend to think about it. He came back and said that he didn't have the authorization to do it. There was this whole history that went, he didn't have authorization to turn it over to the city. He thought about it. The day that he decided he was going to walk away from the project, he actually had reached out to me and said, can we speak? Is there something we could do? Maybe there's, and I agreed. I said, okay, I'm happy to talk to you. Then he sent me another message saying, I need to speak to the owners. And then I got the letter that said that he was pulling out. So that's kind of how things went. It went from, we made an offer, we told him we would try to make sure that he was whole. He was thinking about it, came back, said he wasn't able to do it based on the contract, and finally he's pulled out. Now the letter very emphatically, and I need to make sure that everybody knows this, he stated emphatically he did not speak for the family. He's never spoken for the family. He's never negotiated for the family. He only speaks for himself. And as I said, I believe him to be a man of honor. These 43 homes, every single home that you would add, and that was the original development. We don't know what the next developer would be. The next developer could be 70 homes for all we know. Could be 20 homes for all we know. We don't know. But 43 homes, people can say, it's just kind of a spit in the bucket. Yeah, it is, but every home does matter. So I cannot deny the fact that housing is housing is housing. But I can't deny the fact that putting housing in that area for a variety of ways, and yes, planning and zoning can take care of all those issues. But we've learned in the past that there's only so much that they will do. I can tell you right now that if this is developed, the homes in there will suffer. The water supply that goes to the homes is not sufficient as it is. And that's gonna be my next project, find out what the heck we can do to fix that. I spoke to someone two streets down on Elliott that purchased a pump for his house, and it's still not adequate water. So that's gonna be another bridge I'm gonna have to cross and we're gonna have to work on, but the truth is that this only allows the mayor to negotiate in good faith. It gives him a little bit of power behind his words, or Director Cummings and so on. It doesn't authorize him to commit the city to anything. We commit the city. The next board will commit the city. And maybe the funds can come from different areas, I don't know. There are other areas that maybe some of the funding can be found depending on what we can negotiate, so. But for now, I will, again, sit back and listen.
Alderwoman Lou.
Thank you. In 2017, Moosehead Ecological did a study for us. They did a study and a inventory of open spaces and recommendations for conservation in the city of Nashua. That was 2017. I'm sorry, Alderman O'Brien?
No, I'm trying to get the president's attention.
Right. Do you
You're
want me
fine.
to stop? Okay. This study broke the city into 4 quadrants. So I did the same. But in 2017, they identified the south, west, and the northwest quadrants as being the most important parts of Nashua to focus on for planning for open spaces, because there was so much contiguous land there that could be acquired. They also said, therefore, landowner communication should focus on both areas simultaneously. Now, I hope that our city has taken this study and gone about doing some landowner communications. If they have, and they haven't chosen to identify this piece of property, then it says something. But so I said I divided the city into quadrants, just like they did. And you can do that and pretty much group a few different wards together. And what you see, and I went back with the information we got today from DPW, or the Park and Rec group, and I found that in the Northwest, which is comprised of, well, it doesn't matter. The Northwest has about 55 acres of park. The Northeast, which is where really Park sits, and that's comprised of Ward 3 and 4, there's 325 acres of parks. And also the Riverwalk. So the Riverwalk that we just committed $21 million to provide more open space is something that we chose to do because it will benefit many different socioeconomic areas of the city. Greeley Park is already 100 acres. Whether it's 96 or 120, I'm getting different numbers. But I believe it's an exaggeration to say we've got to get these 15 acres. This part of Nashua is not deficient of open space. 325 acres of park. The Southwest has 441. The Southeast, which is comprised of 4 different wards, has only 165. The Southeast includes 7, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We are park deficient. What that means, according to this study, and according to the master plan, is that we need to have money to acquire some land, some areas that become available in 6, 7, 8, and 9, or if you want to address, park defective or deficient quadrants. We need money to buy land and turn it into parks. The master plan calls for an investment in tree planting. We have a lot of parks these parks are open spaces and they haven't been maintained with tree plantings. That's an expense. That's an infrastructure project that's gonna cost money, and it should be done. It shouldn't be ignored. Besides, so our Park and Rec gave us the acreage of parks throughout the city. But while I waited for that information, I did a survey on my own, and I found if you include open spaces, not just parks, but large tracts of land the city of Nashua has already identified as either wetlands or has chosen to purchase, then we have in the northeast quadrant 180 acres, plus all of Riverwalk. So it's not the highest. The southwest quadrant has more, but the southeast quadrant has 88 acres only of open space. That includes parks and places like the Joyce Natural Area near Burke Street, and which is a large tract, and Salmon Brook. This is a quadrant that needs some money. If it needs to be addressed so that it's equitable with other parts of the city. So I wish, I understand how the residents feel, and I too love Greeley Park, but it's already 100 acres, and I just don't think that money, that 2.5, I don't think it's important to increase that green space at that particular spot. There's also a section in the northeast quadrant that needs attention, and it is Pennachuck Brook. It's further north. They call it vulnerable. It needs to be, it's something that the city should be planning to address, but we need long-term planning and not, boom, let's spend 2.5 million on this. Since I've been on the board, we've spent $25 million, but we've bonded $25 million for a performing arts center that we no longer own. We've put $2.5 million toward a new garage. We've got the DPW development going up for many million. We're working on our schools. I don't think we should out of the blue say, gee, I think we have to also bond this. We have to stop somewhere, and we have to think of what $2.5 million would do for affordable housing as well. And that just about covers it. Oh, one other thing. I may need to abstain on this vote, so I just wanted to ask whether I'm looking at Chapter 5, number 17 on votes, and it tells me that a member may abstain only if he declares a conflict of interest. Now, I thought of this because I remember Alderman Wilshire, I wanted to abstain at one point and you told me I couldn't. And I've heard it brought up before. So I just wanted to ask through you to Corporation Counsel whether 517C, if I'm reading this correctly, that an abstention needs a reason. And if so, could we just correct the record?
Attorney Bolton?
Not sure I understand the question.
Can you rephrase
Let
your
me,
question?
I'll repeat it, I don't think it needs to be rephrased. My question is, do we have an ordinance or a point in our code, which is in our administrative chapter 5, a chapter that's specially dedicated to the Board of Aldermen and its procedures, number 17, entitled Votes, Division, and Recordation, C. And does that say that a member may abstain from voting only if he declares a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest? And if that's in this E-code here, should I assume that you had just never read it, or you forgot it when you said that there's no such requirement?
I think when Alderwoman Kelly and Alderman Laws previously abstained, it was crystal clear why they were abstaining. Because
Can you
of
read
the
their
meetings
minds?
that they had missed, and that was the subject of the communication.
I didn't know you could read minds.
Oh, my God.
I read the communication.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I just really want to go on record that I do not support this, and I'll tell you why. I know the difference between a need and a want. Yes, I would like to see us purchase this property. It would enhance Greeley Park. I agree with the proponents of this. But is it a need? Okay, let's look at it. Greeley Park already exists right now, and today, I would like, whatever is the vote, it seems like we're gonna be discussing it in the future, but I did ask Park Rec, who I was surprised to find out, nobody went up to the director of Park Rec on this issue and elicited their opinion. But I asked, from what Alderman Lowe read, and I says, I would like to see the acreage, and I would like to see the map of the city, because in my idea, when we have parks should be spread out through the whole city, okay? I remember we burnt down a building at the corner of Pine Street and Ledge Street, and we turned that into a park. But I don't encourage the fire department nor the city to go burning down buildings to make more parks.
I don't know if we burned that down.
But somehow Greeley Park exists. It's a wonderful facility. But I have been involved in sports in the city. And the one thing I've had, and I refer to my colleague, Alderman Karen, do we have enough sports fields in the city? We got plenty of woods, but do we have enough sports fields? And that's always seems to have been a problem in the city. We try to run a soccer program, yet we haven't got enough. And we most certainly can't put a soccer program on a lot of a building we burnt down. So I look at this sort of as a want or a need. Greeley Park is a beautiful facility. This will be an addition. Can we afford the addition? Well, let's talk about the fire department for a second. 30 years ago, this city did a study and said needs 2 more fire stations. To build a fire station is $2.5 million. Have we built a fire station in 30 years? Yep, we just had a meeting earlier. How much the population has grown in this city? That's part of our job too. Public safety, and try to look at it. Now, I look at the wards, and I looked at several of the different ward maps. Ward 9 and Ward 1, my God. Somebody screwed the pooch with them. There's not many parks in Ward 1. And one of them, that little park on Thornton Road, was supposed to be a fire station that never got built. 2. Yeah, it was supposed to build 2, but it never got built. But other than that, What park is in Ward 1? If we're gonna spend $2.5 million, I say maybe we should spread it around a little bit. But we're not. We're buying adjacent to a park. Now, let's look, somebody said, well, is this a Pandora's box issue? It is. You go on record and voting for this. Yeah, too bad. Camp Doucette is gone in Ward 9. Yeah, it's gone. And that had a swimming pool. Let me remind you, Ward 9 does not have a swimming pool in the ward. Nowhere in the south end. But that's gone. But you know, development in Spindlewick is still up there. Captain's Corner, development is still going on. They're gonna be knocking on the door. You gotta put the big boy pants on and really make a decision on really what we want to do with this. Yeah, it's a great idea if this was a utopic world. But I don't see the common right now. Yes, we do a lot with conservation land, and that's good. But I think we could do more with the parks and then open it up. How can we say no? Now, I want to get back to Ward 9. I have in Ward 9 an acreage. St. Andrews Park, 3.13 acres. I've been through 3 division park and rec directors trying to get the tot lot fixed. Way less than $2.5 million. Am I correct to my fellow aldermen of Ward 9? And it still hasn't been done. Yet I want to go up and spend $2.5 million. If we pass this tonight, yeah, it doesn't have a price tag on it, and I think, I understood what my colleague Alderman Dowd said. I think he didn't really mean a blank check, but we could still be liable for $2.5 million plus. Even if we bought that property and we decided to keep the building, it's gonna cost to tear it down, isn't it? Is there gonna be parking? Do we need fire access? Because the public is there now. It was private land. There's a lot of ifs. This needs to be very much explored. I'll keep an open mind on it. It is a wonderful idea, but it's between, again, the need and the want. You may want it, but is it the need? Because I guarantee if it gets shot down today and we keep the discussion and the dialogue open in the future, the sun will come out tomorrow. Might be a cloudy day, but the sun will come up. So therefore, in thinking that, and as I wipe my bloody nose, because we're moving at warp speed on this, and I really don't understand that. I think we ought to take a deep breath, stand back, and really look at this whole particular issue and discuss it further. But as it sits right now, it's moving too fast. It's hard for me to digest it, and I'm not going to support it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you, Madam President. So I agree with a lot of what the previous speaker, Alderman O'Brien, said. Not all of it, because I do think that this is a property that we should buy for $2.5 million. But that said, what if we can get it for less? What if we can get the property and it doesn't cost the city any money? Because we can recuperate the cost, because there's currently a house sitting on the property, and I mean, maybe we put 1 or 2 houses on there that can justify, you know, the cost of the expense of it, and you know, we can subdivide it a little bit and keep the back and save most of it, and then the city ends up, it doesn't cost the city anything. We don't know what the possibility is. But this allows the discussion to move further in a more committed way. It doesn't bind the Board of Aldermen to buying the property. It doesn't say that, you know, the next board has to do this. But what it does say is, let's explore what our options are. Because if this is a want and not a need, but there's a way that we can get this property for little to no cost, then is it worth doing? It seemed to me that the previous speaker seems that would be the case. I mean, I certainly would believe that if we can find a way to better our city by doing things like this, then we should explore those options. They may not come to fruition. It could be that, you know, if we pass this tonight, that it goes down and the negotiations go nowhere, and it ends up being that the property gets sold. I guess that's a worst case scenario. But at least we would have tried to find out some answers and to get some answers to the residents who care about this, and to those who have justifiably brought up the price tag. Let's see what we can do. So I just think that the best path forward for us to get answers is to pass this and let the mayor and the economic development director do some research and see and come back to us with some options. And let the next Board of Aldermen decide what's best, you know? The thing is that I understand that that you know, as was alluded to by some previous speakers, that this sort of thing can happen anyway, and the administration can then bring legislation. But the reason, though, that it didn't happen that way is because this was an aldermanic agenda item. And so it came from an alderman. So it kind of, for the idea to be spurred by an alderman, sometimes it has to come in through the legislative route. It doesn't mean that it's less of an idea, or that it shouldn't be studied more, or that no thought went into it on the other hand either. It's just the way that it came in. But I do think that there is merit to the legislation. I think that there's a lot of questions that can be answered by moving forward with this. So I would encourage my colleagues to support this, in the sense of, let's see what we can get, and then later on we can decide whether or not we have the money or the finances, or what the final deal is. But let's at least move this forward and explore those options.
Alderman Lopez.
So just a reminder, we are voting on the resolution for authorizing the mayor to purchase. And I mean, if I'm wrong, any of the more senior aldermen could point it out, but the legislation does actually say for an amount not to exceed $2,500,000. So it has been commented on multiple times that this is a blank check. The price could become astronomical. Not as I read it. Again, if we authorize the mayor to purchase, then that opens the door for him to, number one, indicate the city's interested in the property, and then number two, identify funding sources that would appropriately fund it. There's been a lot of lamenting of the situation with Camp Doucette, and I would point out, I read about it in early last year, I think when I say February of 2021, 2020, no, I think it's 2021. But it was like 4 months later that it actually sold. So what Alderman Clee has done with, her legislation was identify a community need and address it on behalf of her constituents. I would not want to cede authority for doing that in the future and say, from now on, everything that the aldermen, we as legislators do, should be run through city departments first, because our constituents elect us. So we do have to take on these arguments and these battles. I'm sure Alderman Clee wishes she had staff that could handle all of this, plan all of this, do all the feasibility studies that are being proposed for this particular project. But we are elected to represent people, and I think it's within the scope of our authority to request this. That's been verified by legal. So I would say maybe this is a practice for some of us to aspire to in connecting with our residents and addressing these needs, instead of talking about addressing these needs now, where they haven't all been given the same amount of attention or airing or support over the past terms. I would also point out that with regards to how the space is used and whatever quadrant system that study used, this is a very weirdly shaped group of wards, so I don't know how you can divide it into quadrants that don't include multiple wards. But while Ward 3 and Ward 4 have a disproportionate amount of acreage, we also have a disproportionate amount of population density. I know Greeley Park isn't just in Ward 4. It's also, abuts Ward 5 and is used by the entire city. Many of the aldermen who have objected to specific local areas have also in the past stated that they use Greeley Park. So Greeley Park is a shared amenity for the entire city. If we would like to equally distance locations for parks, I would submit that that is a much, much less efficient and effective way to allow access to parks, to give each ward its own 100+ acre park. And that is probably not a serious suggestion. What is serious is we have an opportunity to preserve a chunk of Greeley Park, which it was correctly pointed out it is not in Greeley Park, only surrounded on 3 sides by it. There's a point where you're using parsimony to claim that people are misrepresenting things. Functionally speaking, it is an important element of Greeley Park. I have pointed out in the past that parts of Mine Falls, which were thought to be part of the park, were developed, and then people realized exactly how close the abutting properties were. I would also point out that this board actually voted to obtain a piece of property because they recognized the opportunity and the value, and hopefully recognized the public concern that would arise if that parcel had been developed and it was thought to be part of Greeley Park. So these are opportunities that don't come back. Once a parcel is developed, it at best takes years to recover. Keeping spaces natural, keeping spaces green, taking conservation seriously is more than a want. It may not be on the same level of need as a fire department, fire station, but I would also argue that adding a whole bunch more houses when we still haven't addressed that situation isn't necessarily the way to go either. We should be addressing the city's needs as well as those opportunities in between that will become needs if we don't have the foresight to recognize them as they are today. Because for all of those aldermen who've mentioned that they go to Greeley Park, previous boards had the foresight to identify and protect that. Same thing with with Mine Falls. If you're lacking that foresight, then maybe you don't understand the difference between a need and a want.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. And for my colleague to the left, I'm going to put on my big boy pants and I'm going to speak to this. First off, need versus want. The bottom line is we can say that and it really sounds good. Do we need it? Do we want it? But the bottom line is if we don't go for it, we don't get a second chance. I believe the mayor brought up the Penachuk property when that whole sale was happening. I remember I was just a citizen, and when it hit the headlines that this property was going to be developed, and the city had kind of lost out on it, and the previous mayor was scrambling, I remember how irate I was how did this slip by? How did we miss this? Why did this happen? And the truth is, it did happen. Camp Touset happened. Other things have happened. Alderman Lopez brought up the point about the property alongside Greeley Park, Mine Falls. I walk through Mine Falls a lot. I walk on the paved path where you get a lot of the bikers. And as you walk through Mine Falls through there, you see a lot of those factories and parking lots. It's not as pleasant as walking at the lower end where I can walk by where the Swans are or the soccer fields. You get a completely different experience. So to develop that part of Greeley Park will do a disservice, and it will take away from the beauty of the park that we all love. Now, I looked at that same spreadsheet, and as Alderman Lopez pointed out, Ward 3 and Ward 4 have a very high density. So if I were to pull out Greeley Park, I could look at things like the Salem Street Tot Lot, or I could look at the Shattuck Street Tot Lot. Those are important in very high density areas. Part of one of the things that's brought up in there is something called Foster Square. And if anybody knows where Locke and Orange Street is, to call that a park, yes, it is. It's got 2 benches in it and it's got a statue. It's not really a park. Actually, I call it Poopville because that's what people do, is just let their dogs out and poop in that area. And to answer something that Alderman O'Brien had mentioned, that no one contacted the Public Works, that's wrong. I did send an email. I did ask a question, and I did speak to Lauren. She did call me. I did talk to her. She said, because I asked her a question, what is the stance of Public Works? She said they're not taking a stance. They're not against it. They're not for it. They were just staying neutral on it. And I said, okay, I could understand that. I could respect that. She said that they weren't really sure. They had no conclusive evidence that the reduction of those trees could hurt the park. It might hurt the park, but it might be something that would happen 9, 10 later years. It wouldn't happen immediately. It's something that would be eroding. I believe that ex-Alderman Richardson had sent us something from a previous Board of Aldermen when they talked about selling off little bits and pieces of the park. And that board sent that on to, not a no vote, but basically I think it was indefinitely postponed. So things have happened. Obviously, parts of Greeley have been either sold off or eroded. The original will talked about 168 more or less acres. Now we know that when I looked at the 3 parcels of what was considered Greeley Park, I didn't really even quite come up to like 100, maybe 126 acres of it. We look at Ward 3 as having a lot of acres. I look over at 5, where they say that they have quite a large number, but that's primarily Mine Falls. Ward 1 does have park. They have Lincoln Park, and they have an entrance to Mine Falls. Whether Mine Falls falls within Ward 1 or it falls within Ward 5, I don't know. Mine Falls also falls in parts of Ward 4, because it's really big. It's really huge. So it's loved and used by everyone within the city. I can say the same thing with Greeley Park. I talk to people that live in French Hill, and they walk up Concord Street, and they go to Greeley Park. There is a little pool in Greeley Park for the kiddies to go into, and it's a beautiful pool. It's really tiny, but it is a beautiful pool. We have baseball fields there. We have pickleball court on the east side, not on the west side, but on the east side. So Greeley Park is used by all kinds of people. We have a stage there. It needs to be finished, and but we do have that. We have a little children's park with swings and so on. That is also in there. They recently replaced, I think, the old slide because it was metal, rusted, and even burning children. So they now have one that will not do that to it. I'm sorry that the Ward 9 parks are not being taken care of, and I have spoken to Alderwoman Harriet Gathright on that, and that, just like yours, Alderman O'Brien, is something that she really wants to be looked at, and it should be looked at. And I think it should get the attention that it deserves. But one of the problems with Greeley Park is if we don't do it now, we don't act now, it's done. As far as the 2.5 million, you all have tabled that, so that isn't on discussion. And while this other one might say not to exceed 2.5 million, it doesn't mean we're spending 2.5 million. Maybe be less, maybe we only purchase half of that, but I want the right of negotiation for the mayor, for economic development, whether to buy all of it, whether to buy part of it, but at least to start that discussion. And as was pointed out, this came in from an alderman. It didn't come in from Director Cummings, it didn't come in from any other department. It came in from me, and it came in together just for that reason. I did not want to ask for a bond and then have to come back and ask for authorization to spend that bond. Logic was to bring them both in together. I don't have a staff, but I do have an amazing ward who has done a lot of work. And they have given me more information than I ever knew about Greeley Park. And I'm sure you've all been the recipient of some of that information as well. So yes, I don't have a staff, but I do have an incredible constituency that has worked very hard for it. They've sent you emails, they've talked to friends and family and so on that live there. For these people to come out and say, please purchase this land, enhance Greeley Park, save Greeley Park. I know I wrote something here. Alderman O'Brien, you brought up the Pandora's box. This would not be the first time that the city has purchased land to stop development. Pennachuck is the perfect example of it. We purchased that land to make sure that it didn't go somewhere else, that it didn't go to a foreign country. This is not quite the same thing. We're not worried about going to a foreign country, but we want to make sure that we save the integrity of it. It was asked, why didn't we approach the family? To me, it would have been ghoulish to wait for this person who was passing away on their deathbed, go knock on the door and say, hey, could we buy your property? We didn't know what the family wanted to do. For all we knew, the family themselves wanted to move back into that house. We did not know this was going up for sale. We heard about it, or at least I heard about it, when I was contacted by Mr. Geisinger, who said, can we meet? I've heard you're the Ward 3 Alderman, and I'd like to talk to you. That was literally days before he held a meeting. He actually notified the abutters and the neighbors before he talked to me about it. So from the moment I learned about it, I took action. I didn't just sit back, I took action. You don't have to agree with me. I understand exactly where you feel. I understand where your constituencies feel. But I can't just say, Ward 3 has too much green space, or Ward 1 doesn't have enough green space, or Ward 2 doesn't have enough green space.
You're staying at a hotel for 2 weeks while the
The issue really is that the green space is where it is. And we're changing the lines constantly. So to turn around and say, this or that, as a matter of fact, I think Ward 2's green space will probably grow a little bit because they're going to be taking some of the thing, I think the Pennachuck Brook is, which is going to be an issue for you, to have to take care of and so on. So need versus want, you can define it as that, but this is a one-shot deal. If it gets developed, trees clear cut, it's over, it's done. Thank you.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Thank you, Madam President. When this first came to us and there was these apartments or townhouses that were going to be built, we talked about whether it was affordable. And what I found out and what we were told was that no, it was not affordable housing at all. It was like a I think it was 650K type of homes. So right off the bat, I was against that because we are trying to put in low income and affordable housing here in New Hampshire. So I'm really happy that the gentleman pulled out of that negotiation because it was bad news for Nashua. Secondly, the planning board and economic board passed this, to us in a favorable position And some of you actually chaired other boards here, committees here, and you pass things to the full board, you know, expecting that you've done your due diligence and, you know, and your board have done, your committees have done your due diligence, and you pass it off here for us to make decisions. What I'm finding here today is that a committee did their job, and there's some questions about it, and here we are now, and we have some of our colleagues that, mostly the same ones that were against it in the beginning, are still against it. That's the essence of it. Most importantly, R21-203 is just allowing the mayor to negotiate, and that's important. And I don't, if it's any other property, the same thing, someone's allowed to negotiate. It doesn't say we're gonna pay for this, we're gonna buy this. It doesn't say any of those things at that point, because no matter what, they have to come back to the board at some point in time. And the board makes that decision in terms of how we're gonna pay for it, whether the neighbors are gonna assist or raise money, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. So to shut it down without passing forward just doesn't seem right to me. Then I looked at the situation with St. Andrews. The money is there, and I have been dealing with them for a long time now. The money is there, and all he has to do, what I was told was that he needed to take the money from one pot and put it in another pot, because it's the last part to be done. And I was told that it should be done by the springtime, just to update you with that. But I'm not gonna be here, so I would like you to follow through to make sure we get St. Andrews, because we were the last ward to get the park redone. So with that said, I hope that my colleagues will really consider allowing the mayor to negotiate or to go forward with this. And at some point, next year, I'm sure he'll come back with what he's found in that area. Because Greeley Park was not just a Ward 3, Ward 4 park. Greeley Park belongs to Nashua and the Nashua residents. And my constituents were just as concerned. So I'm just saying that I think that we should look at this as a Nashua issue, not specifically for 3 and 4. Thank you, Madam
Alderman Lou.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct a couple of things. Every ward has the same population. So Ward 4 and 3, they're not more heavily populated than any other ward, generally speaking. The point that I had tried to make is I put 3 and 4 together because they are on the map, the northeast quadrant, and that gave me 180 acres plus the Riverwalk development that we've just earmarked 21 million for. Oh, geez, I forgot the second thing. Every park in Nashua is a city park, every park. People go to their favorite parks. They drive to them. So we all understand that Greeley Park is for the whole city, but the master plan has identified that with a walkable city, you need distributed green spaces. You need to give residents of neighborhoods somewhere to go where they don't have to jump in the car to bring the kids to. So it's important that we embrace this idea that we have to start distributing and finding ways to build green spaces where there aren't any. And finally, as far as funding goes, as far as the recommendations go, we're also taking into consideration something that neither of those boards needed to, which is the cost, the expense. That's our unique consideration, and that's why it's very easy to say. It's easy when you don't think about the expense. yes, let's add to Greeley Park, sure. Let's make it even bigger. But we only have limited resources, and we've identified in the master plan some really, really important human-centric needs. Open spaces is great for people. That's what we need. But people also need affordable housing. People also need neighborhoods with equitable green space. So I also want you to keep in mind that I just don't think this is a need, but the conservation fund does have 1.6 million in it, and maybe that's the funding, something that's sitting there. I'm not sure what it's being held for, but we don't need to further encumber the taxpayers. And finally, can only remember one thing at a time. I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate Alderwoman Gathwright's reminding us that committees spend time looking at issues and making recommendations, and we ought to listen to them very carefully. But I would like to point out, I did watch the planning board meeting, and they were very careful to point out, number one, it wasn't unanimous. And there was one vote against it. And they were very careful to point out that they were not, evaluating the deal, so to speak. They were just looking at it, and the chairman emphasized that they were just looking at, if the city acquired this land, would it, would it be consistent with, the city, the master plan? The Planning and Economic Development Committee, they only had 4 members in attendance. One of them abstained, and the vote was 2-1. So it was not a unanimous vote there either. So I appreciate and I agree with you that work should be done in the committee, and we ought to respect the committee's work. But we still have a right to look at it. We don't have to accept what they vote, especially a close vote like that at the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. And I would ask, if I could ask another question of Corporation Counsel, the ordinance that we're looking at, says that the mayor is hereby authorized to purchase the property located at 15 Bartlett Avenue, tax map 57, lot 3, on terms and conditions and for such purchase price as determined by the mayor, with the purchase price not to exceed $2,500,000, and then further resolve that the Corporation Counsel will prepare all the necessary documents, etc. So does this mean that if the mayor is able to reach a deal to purchase this property for less than $2,500,000, and he somehow comes up with the funding from the budget without requiring a new bond, that he could do that without coming back to the Board of Aldermen, or does this ordinance require him to come back to the Board of Aldermen for approval?
Well, it's a resolution, not an ordinance.
You're correct, sorry.
But I don't fully understand what you mean by come up with the money in the budget. This is not in the budget as far as I know currently. At least it's not been identified as being in the budget anywhere. If there was going to be a transfer of funds, that would require action by this board. If it was going to be added to the budget as an additional appropriation, that would require action by this board. Now, you may have to do that if the mayor were to enter into an agreement and bind the city, which this gives them the authorization to do. But you've heard him say tonight that he wouldn't do that without including a contingency that this board would have to authorize the expenditure in some manner. So that's what the mayor said.
So, Madam President, I would like to make an amendment to add after the first paragraph, subject to final approval by the Board of Aldermen.
That's your motion,
That's my
okay?
motion.
Discussion on that motion. Alderman Lopez.
Doesn't that potentially undermine the purpose of passing this at all? Because the idea is to indicate an authorized person, and by amending it so that that person that has to consult with 15 others, they're not authorized?
I'm not sure what your question actually is.
I'm pointing out that if we make it subject to the Board of Aldermen in the manner that's being suggested, it undermines the idea of having the mayor be able to enter into that negotiation phase, because he can't promise anything if it still has to go through the Board of Aldermen in that particular way. If he can at least negotiate the purchase and then has to, on his own side, make sure that there's funding available or a strategy for it, at least he can approach the potential seller with that position.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually support this amendment, and I'll explain why. I support it because I believe that it basically encaptures the spirit of what we're trying to do, and what has been laid out tonight, at least by myself anyway. Because essentially what we want to do is to have this go forward and be negotiated and see what we can come up with. And I think multiple speakers have said that this evening. And I think what Corporation Counsel was trying to say was that, you know, any appropriation would be subject to an act by the Board of Aldermen, but that the mayor could potentially bind the city into an agreement. Now, I don't think the mayor would do that. But this legislation just kind of, this amendment just kind of tidies that up. So I have no problem with the amendment. I'm fully in support of it. I think it keeps the spirit of the legislation alive, and really it just kind of encapsulates what we're trying to do.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually agree with both Alderman Lopez and Alderman Clemmons. I understand people's anxiety of thinking that the mayor would bind the city. He has come out and said he wouldn't, but then if he does, what is the recourse? So I do understand that anxiety. I would love it to just be clean and allow the mayor to negotiate up to a certain amount, pending approval of the amount. So while I would prefer it to be as it was, I will support the amendment. And I don't know if I can state this, but your comment, Alderman Jettie, about the planning board and the PEDC, I had written a note because that's exactly what I was going to say about the membership that was there. But I do believe that we still talked it out, so you watched. I did answer all their questions as to the property. We did not discuss the price of it. But one of the things that they did state was that it was within the master plan, keeping with the, I believe they said, with the spirit of the master plan and what they had to do. And they did say that the master plan did also discuss housing and so on, but they felt that this was equal or surpassed that. So I just also wanted to get that out on the open. But While I would prefer not to have this amendment, I am happy to support it. I don't believe that it will change anybody's mind here. I think everybody's mind is more or less made up as to how they want to vote on it, but I do think that it's a olive branch, so to speak. So, yes, I will support it.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a parliamentary inquiry. Where this has a dollar amount potentially of $2.5 million as the cap, would this require a 10-member vote?
If it's bonded.
I guess I'm not following. Why would it?
Well, I think if I can further explain to corporate counsel, whenever we vote on these type of things, we usually go with financial matters that we need to have the supermajority of the 10, right, on whenever we look at the budget. And I'm just wondering where this could affect the budget. Would that come under a 10-vote rule?
If you're talking about a supplemental appropriation, this does not supplementally appropriate any funds.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Motion is to amend. Further discussion on that motion? Alderman Harry Gathright.
I don't think it's on that. It was on something else. That's okay.
Okay. Motion is to amend. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Abstain.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes?
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
We have 14 yeas and 1 abstention.
And that motion carries. Further discussion on Resolution 21-203 as amended. Alderman Clay, if you have something new, Alderman Clay.
I just, the comment that I want to make is that from the beginning, this portion was just to authorize the mayor to be able to do it. I think the 2.5 that was put in there not to exceed was because that was a request of the bond. My hope from the beginning is that it would always be less than that. That's why that dollar figure was put into this, the not to exceed on it. So I just want to make that clear that we're not giving, from the beginning, we were not authorizing the mayor to take $2.5 million and go and buy this property. We still would have had to have a 2/3 vote on a bond of some sort. So we would have needed the 10 on that one. I believe this is just a need of a simple majority and so on. And at that, I will stop.
Motion before us is for final passage of Resolution 21-203 as amended.
I want to clear.
Oh, Alderman Gathright.
Okay. I just want for those, there was a memorandum that came out from the planning department manager, and their vote was 5-1 in favor of the recommendation.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Further discussion. Motion is for final passage as amended. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
No.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
No.
Alderman Karen.
No.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Abstain.
Alderwoman Lou.
No.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 10 yeas, 4 nays, and 1 abstention.
That motion carries, and Resolution 21-203 is declared duly adopted as amended. Unfinished business ordinances.
Second reading of Ordinance O-2173, amending the inclusionary zoning supplemental use regulations.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of O 2173 by roll call.
Okay, motion is for final passage of Resolution 21, Ordinance 2173. Discussion on that motion. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, President Wilshire. I'll keep it brief. I think that a lot of the constituents who spoke earlier really hit the nail on the head in terms of how many people have come together to get this piece in front of us. I think with our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we really can start to make some headway with this. And, it's step one of a bigger plan to continue to increase the affordable housing. So I know all of you have heard me talk about this a lot, and I appreciate everyone who's worked on it, but I just wanted to say I'm excited that it's here, and I really hope that everyone's.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to echo Alderwoman Kelly's words. I think this is a good plan. I think it's a win for everybody. It doesn't hurt anybody. It keeps everybody whole. I know that Alderwoman Kelly has worked hard, to educate people and so on this, and as have many of my board members, such as Alderwoman Schmidt and Alderwoman Gathright, et cetera. I think it's important. I think this will pass with flying colors, and I'm happy to have been one of the endorsers.
Alderman Lopez.
I want to echo my support for this legislation. It is long overdue, and the longer my speech is, the more it will be overdue. So I am shutting up now.
Alderman Schmidt.
I would just like to thank all the citizens that came forward to talk about this. This was wonderful. Without your input, it might not have happened. You made a difference in this city, and I really, really want to thank you.
Further discussion? I myself think this is a great move forward. It's long overdue and something that the city really needs. Okay, motion is for final passage of Ordinance 2173. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
that motion carries. Ordinance 2173 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance O 2176 relative to seasonal road closures and elimination of certain on-street parking for use by restaurants for outdoor dining.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to table O21-076, which is a non-debatable motion, which is a breath of fresh air, by roll call.
The motion is to table ordinance 2176. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes,
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
that motion carries. Ordinance 2176 is declared tabled.
Amended ordinance O 2181 relative to the revision of ward boundaries.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to take from the table O-21-081 by roll call.
Motion is to take ordinance 2181 from the table. Discussion on that? Not debatable. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll? Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes,
We have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
and that motion carries. Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of O-21-081 as amended by roll call.
Motion is for final passage as amended. Discussion on that motion.
Have
Alderman
we
Jettie.
amended it?
Alderman Jettie?
Have we amended it?
Yes. Oh, no, we haven't amended
We
it,
did
I'm
at
sorry.
the previous meeting.
Oh, at a previous meeting, we amended it, okay.
Oh, and then we had a public hearing, and then, okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Motion is for final passage as amended. Discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire.
Yes.
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
That motion carries, and ordinance 2181 is declared duly adopted as amended.
Ordinance O-2182, requiring legislation and related information to be available.
No.
Alderwoman Lou?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move for final passage of this and speak to it briefly.
It's got to be taken from the table first.
You have to take it off the table.
Okay. I move that we take the legislation on,
Here.
thank you very much, O-21-082 off the table.
Okay, the motion is to take ordinance 2182 from the table. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
No.
Alderman Clee,
No.
Alderwoman Kelly,
No.
Alderman Dowd,
No.
Alderman Karen,
No.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver, Alderwoman Harriet Gathright,
No.
Alderman Wiltshire,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes.
You have 9 yeas and 6 nays.
And that motion carries. Ordinance 2182 is removed from the table. Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you. I
Move final passage.
I move for final passage.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Lou?
Thank you. We all received a correspondence from Ms. Graham on this, and I understand that this arrangement that we had has become more work than is feasible, particularly as we lost, I believe, a part-time staff member in the legislative office. I'm hoping that all of you had a chance to take a look and see what it was that Ms. Graham was doing as a result of the meeting that we had for 12 months. As you can see, if you look at any piece of legislation during that time, it was easy to go to the legislation and then find out where to look for any of the background on the discussions. I can't tell you how difficult it was for me when we were discussing the charter change and when I was very, when my question about the need to declare it, necessary was told that it had to be done immediately. It took me hours to look at other charter changes. It's not easy because these charter changes, this legislation, you only know when they passed. You don't know when they were introduced. Some of them are introduced 8 months before. This is really, really valuable. It's valuable for a resident who cares about, the history of the legislation or the legislation itself. It's easy for us because we have an assistant who helps with our research, but it's not easy for anyone else. I implore Mayor Donchis to fully staff the legislative office so that this could continue. It was only by looking back at prior legislation and being able to identify, which was time consuming, the minutes that I had to go to, that I learned that in fact, it had been very routine not to declare it necessary before committee. So I think in the interest of more clarity and everyone in our city being able to have access to the research tools that we have, I hope that if you don't support this today, that in next term, you do what you can to ensure that we get fully staffed so that this can be done, because I think it makes a huge difference. I don't know if anyone took a look at it, but I just want to, implore the mayor to fully staff that office and to, that you see the benefit of this method, and if necessary, put it into legislation, because I thought it was going to be done, going forward, and unfortunately it wasn't. Thank you.
Well, for the record, the mayor is not the one that staffs the legislative office. That's me. So.
I implore you.
Okay, you've heard the motion, discussion. Alderman Lopez.
Just take this opportunity to invite the public to spread the word that we're looking for a aldermanic assistant, because in talking to Ms. Graham in the past, there's not exactly an abundance of applicants, and it's very important work. So someone who's looking for an opportunity to do some real good and is very interested in transparency, accountability, and translating those minutes from verbal to written, this is an opportunity.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. So first off, I respect the work of our legislative assistant, and I believe it was a joint communication too with the city clerk, and I respect both of them immensely. But, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I just wanted to point something out. We have legislation that's passed and that's been denied or indefinitely postponed or whatever on the city website going back to 2002. And when I just for the heck of it, I pulled up a random ordinance from 2004. And on here, so this is ordinance 0430. And it gives me the first reading date, which was 8/10/2004. And then it gives me the approval date, 9/13/2004. So if I go back to the meeting minutes of of 2004, I can know that, to look for, in this case, it was relating to a parking meter, so it probably went to infrastructure. But I can take a look at the infrastructure meeting, and I can look at that meeting minutes and see what happened. And then I can go to the approval date. So in 9/13/2004, there was a Board of Aldermen meeting where this was approved. And I can look into that as well. And then if I click on the text details, I can get even more information about the actual ordinance itself. So the research is, the availability is there if you want to do the research. And I'm sure that, you have to have some working knowledge anyway of how the Board of Aldermen works, but I know that if a citizen was looking for that, that they could get that information from the city clerk or from the legislative office. So I am going to respect the wishes of our legislative office and the city clerk, and I am not going to support this evening. If they can find a better or another way forward, I'd be happy to hear it, but I think it should come from them. They're the ones doing the work, and I think it's vital that we listen to our employees. So for that reason, I'll be voting no.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. I wanted to say that I think that, the transparency and the ease of information that Alderwoman Liu outlined, I think makes sense, but I am always hesitant to support something that creates more work for a department without having heard directly from them how they feel about it. And I think codifying it when we know we're already understaffed is just not an appropriate move at this point.
Further discussion? Alderwoman Liu.
I just want to clarify that, yes, indeed, in 2002, you would have been able to find that, but that practice was discontinued at some point. I don't know exactly what the year was, and so that's what led me to attempt to get it reinstated. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
No.
Alderman Clee.
No.
Alderwoman Kelly.
No.
Alderman Dowd.
No.
Alderman Karen.
No.
Alderman Clemmons.
No.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
No.
Alderwoman Liu.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderman Schmidt.
No.
Alderman Laws.
No.
Alderman Cleaver.
No.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
No.
Alderman Wilshire.
No.
You have 2 yeas and 13 nays.
And that motion fails. New business resolutions.
There is none.
New business ordinances.
There is none.
Period for general public comment. I have
Laura
one-
Cajon.
I'll get to you in one moment. Thank you.
Didn't want you to miss me this time.
Okay, I'll get to you in one moment. Jim Tolner.
I live at 1 Sequoia Circle, Nashua. First of all, I'd like to commend the board. The inclusionary zoning supplemental use regulations is a very good piece of legislation. I'm just here to thank the aldermen that are leaving the board for their time and service. Anybody just had to look at tonight's meeting. It's just a small sample of how much time and sometimes pain you put into these meetings. But I would like to recognize 2 people. The first one is Dave Fredette, who is a very good friend of mine, who served the city for over 20 years. And I think that not only will he be missed for what he did in performing his duties, we also think that he'll be missed personally by the people in the city. So I wanted to recognize him. And the other person that I've waited all night to recognize is June Karen. She's been on the board now, I think, 10 years, if I'm correct. But in addition to that, she served the city for 40 years. So you're looking at a person who has dedicated 50 years of her life in one way or another to the city. And that's why I came down here tonight, and I just wanted to make sure that the citizens of Nashua recognize that, and I want to thank her personally. Thanks very much, and everybody have a good New Year.
Thank you. Laura Calhoun.
First of all, it's Laura Cahoon at 30 Greenwood Drive. If the board does not want the residents to call in via phone, they should say that and not allow it. I tried to call, I was on the phone from the beginning, and I was not allowed to talk. Number two, if the board has put a limit on the residents' conversations on how much we can speak, I would highly recommend that maybe the board put a limitation on each member of the aldermen so that we don't have to listen to a lot of repeat information. Also on NRO 5-6 pertaining to Shoshana Kelly. I think that's a very misleading memo because it says she's been out 3 times this quarter. However, if you look at her attendance record for the year, she has been out 8 out of 19 meetings, whereby she should not have been paid for 2 quarters. And I would ask that the Board of Aldermen deduct that money from her pay because she is not representing the residents of Nashua. And I will be reviewing all the aldermen, and I think Skip Klee also in the first quarter missed three meetings. So I think this is something that the board should start looking at because I know it's coming out of the residents' pockets, but somebody's got to look at the money. Thank you.
Lori Orlano.
Hi, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I wanted to address the Board of Education meeting that took place on December 20th and the mayor's involvement in that meeting to speak regarding the impasse on the teacher's contract. I really feel that that crossed the line when it comes to ethics and appropriate actions on the part of the mayor to do what he did. I negotiated several teachers' contracts when I was on the school board, and that work was maintained, very private, confidential work between the negotiating team, which was made up of members of the board, and of course, teachers from the union. And my understanding is the mayor reached out to Heather Raymond to talk to her about encouraging the school board to accept the pay raises that the teachers union wanted because there had been some concessions on healthcare. He didn't have a negotiating position to do that kind of overreach, but he said that he was going to go to the meeting on December 20th and speak as a citizen, because as a citizen, he has a right to do that. Well, when he went to the meeting on the 20th, first of all, he was given 5 minutes to talk, and he never identified himself as a citizen at the microphone, identified himself. And he proceeded to, certainly get the teachers fired up in support of what he was saying and clapping for him. But tonight it was mentioned by a board member, I think Ben Clemens, that he didn't suspect that the mayor would bind the city into any kind of agreement if he were to negotiate the Bartlett Street property. But in that meeting on December 20th, he made it clear that he thought that the Board of Education should make every effort to give the additional percentage point that the teachers wanted, and we at City Hall will help you in terms of providing the funding to support the contract. What right does the mayor have to stand at a microphone and let the teachers know when they're at an impasse heading into mediation that the City Hall is going to make up the difference or more of it? He totally blew their mediation because now these teachers are going to want what a mayor said he can deliver. And frankly, I'd be furious if I were on that negotiating team, that a mayor could do that and hijack my meeting. Secondly, he talked about the fact that the concessions made on healthcare. He realized that the city was, that their agreement for healthcare reform was a significant savings realized to the city to offset a significant portion of the raises that are being discussed. What exactly is that portion? He didn't define it. We know that with the additional percentage put on, it's probably $11.5 million of raise increases. Is a significant portion with the healthcare adjustment $7-8 million? Is it 2 or 3?
Time.
He never disclosed that. So I hope you all realize that I see this as a very serious ethics violation for this mayor to do what he did. Thank you.
Alex Como.
Yes, thank you, Alex Como for Lewis Street. I just wanted to once again thank the 7 outgoing members of the board. I think I accidentally said one of your names twice last time and left somebody out, so my apologies. Alderwoman Karen, Alderwoman Harry Cathright, Alderwoman Lou, Alderman Cleaver, Alderwoman Schmidt, Alderman Tenza, and Alderman Laws. I just want to thank you for your service to the city of Nashua, for everything you've done over the last 2+ years, especially Alderwoman Karen for your exemplary time in service of the city. And I look forward next month to beginning my time in service to the city. Thank you very much.
And I don't see anyone else.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry? Oh, Matthew Guthrow?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President and Alderman. I just wanted to comment on the meeting that you guys had last week concerning the public hearing for Ordinance 02183 relative to requiring face mask coverings. I understand the need for making these emergency meetings for the greater good of public health, but I'm concerned about when we have these meetings and there is no second reading and no public comment. And as we bring in a new group of aldermen in the new year, I hope that we in the future will look to these opportunities to see if we can get public comment and without necessity needing passing it only on a first reading. I think that that we missed a great opportunity to engage our public about why we need to wear masks. And I think there was a lot of conversation that was had, but we didn't get a lot of input from the residents. I actually tuned in to the last Board of Health meeting in which they didn't have any public comment on that as well. And so I think we need to listen to our constituents more. I understand the need for doing the greater good when it comes to the public health of our community, but I think we're not doing ourselves justice when we're not hearing what the public has to say concerning creating an ordinance, creating legislation without a second reading or public comment. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all a very happy new year.
Matthew, can I have your address, please?
I'm sorry, I live on 104 Fawn Lane in Nashua.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't see anyone else from the public. Remarks by members of the board. Oh, boy. Alderman Lopez.
Oh, give it all out? Okay. First, I would like to wish best of luck to all of my fellow outgoing aldermen, as well as the best of luck to those of us who are remaining and those who are coming in. I would like to thank Alderman Karen for her service, particularly her many years on the board, which they don't add up because she told me when I was first an alderman, she's only 39, so I haven't figured that out. But I appreciate working with you as well as all of you, Alderman Laws, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Gathright, Alderman Schmidt, and there's so many people who left. We should probably stop losing elections. On a more somber note, I wanted to express my condolences to the friends and family of Paul Richaupi. Paul was very involved in local arts events and community events downtown. I know he will be deeply missed by many members of the community, and so I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Karen.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you. It's been a long ride since I was actually 16, and it's been challenging sometimes, but I think we have learned to work together and try to make the best of our city. We may not always agree. Sometimes you have to compromise, but I think that's the way it should be. I'm leaving because it was time to move on and let someone else step up to the plate, and I know that all the new aldermen who are coming in will do a good job, and I'm sure that those of you longstanding aldermen will be great mentors. It's nice to know that we have a lot of female aldermen, because I remember when the first one came on board, Ms. Alice Doobie, and she worked very hard to be a member of the board when it was all gentlemen. So this is really, we've come a long way, as they say, you've come a long way. The other thing I'd like to wish condolences to a longtime classmate of mine, Sue McCarthy, who worked here at City Hall for over 25 years. She lost her son before Christmas time due to an illness, and we want to send out our sympathies from her classmates and everyone around her to know that she's in our thoughts and prayers. And I'd like to wish you all a happy, safe, healthy holiday. Thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I want to wish all of the departing aldermen all the best. It's been a pleasure working with you, and certainly hope to retain you as friends as we move forward. I'm certainly not going to let Alderman Karen, that I've known since, we won't go back that far.
39 years.
Probably longer than that. And I told her I'd keep her with an arm's length of what we're doing, so she will stay knowledgeable whether she likes it or not. So, and a happy new year to everyone. And I had other comments, but I'm going to let them slide due to the lateness of the hour.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Temple Beth today. They hosted as a vaccination site, and based on what I've heard from my constituents and those outside of Ward 3, it was very successful. The wait was minimal at best. They were live streaming to let people know if there were lines and so on. So I think it worked out really, really well. I'm happy that they were able to do that. But I did get a lot of, and you were able to get the boosters, all ages, everything was there. So I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I want to kind of clarify something. The confidential email that did come from Attorney Bolton was received on 12/20, just for clarification on that. And then I'd like to thank all of my colleagues. Those that are leaving, the 7 of you that are leaving, you're really going to be missed. We've become friends over these past 4 years, and I really hate to see you all go. Speaking to the women, we've lost 3 in total, so there will be 4 women on the board. I would have liked to see more. We had done a good job of keeping it a little bit more even, but there's 2 more years. So thank you, and everybody have a Happy New Year.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I too would like to send best wishes to my fellow colleagues on the board who this is your last meeting. You've done good. It was a pleasure to serve with you. And, you know, a special fond goodbye to Alderman Laws and Alderman Tenza and Alderman June Carriage, who evidently, I'm glad I'm still here, because I got 35 years on the fire department, and I'll have 8 on the board, 16 years as a state rep. I might beat you, I don't know.
That's okay. At the same time.
But anyways, I wish you luck. I tell you, honest engine, it was very good to serve with you. You've done a lot of good things, and it's just been good. To my fellow state reps, you're just leaving one. And in the true New Hampshire way, you live in New Hampshire long enough, you'll end up doing time in the House. Whether that's the House of Correction or the State House. So I look forward to, as we change to Representative McGathright, working with Representative Smith and, you know, working with you guys in the future as we move forward. So best wishes, thank you. And Happy New Year to everybody.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to clarify something that one of the speakers had said regarding the mask ordinance, and that was that we did not have a second reading of that. We actually did have a second reading, so it was read initially by the city clerk, and then the first motion that was made was by Alderman O'Brien for a second reading, and then after that, we did have a discussion on it. So there was a second reading. I know that it happened in sort of a non-traditional fashion, but it did happen. But I also, on the other hand, agree that we probably should look to have public comment at our meetings going forward, and I do think that that was a missed opportunity. So I agree with you on that, Matt. One of the other things that I also wanted to point out as well is that I was very happy this evening to see as many people come out about the affordable housing. I think it's great that we have such a passionate group of people in this city that care about that issue, and I'm was ecstatic to see that passed, and I hope we can do more on that particular topic in the future. I want to wish every one of my colleagues who is leaving the board well. It was great serving with you. You've all done our city proud, and you can rest assured that everybody knows that this is a hard job and appreciates the efforts that you all put forward. And with that, I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and we'll see you next year.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I'll keep it short in true Kelly fashion, but I wanted to echo so many of the words of my fellow aldermen and just thanking everyone who has served on this board. It's been quite an experience, coming in new and having, such an interesting group of people who really did support each other and learn together. I put a huge smile on my face when Alderman Karen talked about mentoring and, that she's seen, women on this board grow because I really consider her one of my mentors. She sat right next to me with her hats and, we talked quite a bit and she taught me a lot when she was sitting next to me. So she will be missed, as well as Alderman Laws, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Herring Gathright, everyone who's outgoing. Best of luck, and thank you for your service. Oh, and I will say thank you very much for support of the inclusionary zoning. It's a big piece of the work that we've been doing, and I'm really thankful that that is going forward.
Alderman Laws.
Thank you, Madam President. I wrote an outgoing speech. I got it down to like 23 minutes, so just bear with me.
I think we have to mute this.
Move to adjourn.
I just wanted to thank all of you for your patience and grace and say that it's been one of the great honors of my life to work with you for the last 4 years. I can't tell you how much I appreciate every one of you and your contributions to the board. And I'm thankful to my constituents for supporting me, and some outgoing advice for the incoming alderman is just don't let the bastards get you down. Thanks a lot. Happy New Year, everyone.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I want to say that I'm leaving the board, and I'm tremendously honored to have been a part of such a dynamic group of talented and dedicated people. It's truly a remarkable group, and I am impressed with everyone. So it's going to be bittersweet for me not to be on the board. But having served, I was happy to learn how dedicated and tremendously valuable our city employees are. What a great job the mayor does. And I want to thank everybody for the opportunity. It's been tremendous. And I wish everybody well and Happy New Year. And thank you very much for allowing me to serve.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just wanted to say again, like my colleagues had said previously, thank you for the opportunity to serve on this board. When I look back at the last 4 years and the things that we've been able to accomplish together, I think about, a lot of great projects that are going to serve the city for many decades to come. Things like the Performing Arts Center, the Riverfront Master Plan, and certainly all the work that was done during the pandemic to help keep businesses in the community afloat. I'm really proud to have been a small part of that, for the community. I do worry, all of those projects, they are great projects and we were able to start them, but I think that they're all gonna need a lot of attention in order to make them as fully as successful as they can be for all of us. One of the reasons that it was easy to not run again, one of the many reasons, was that I did learn a lot about the city. I learned what a terrific professional staff there is that runs the city. So I wanted to say, thank you to them, and please keep up the good work. I know that all the folks, all the directors, and the mayor in particular with his leadership, I know that we'll be continue to head in the right direction, continue to make progress for citizens of the city. So thank you very much to my colleagues on the board for, like Alderman Law said, your patience and your guidance over the last 4 years. I truly appreciate it. And I appreciate that for the folks who are coming back next term, the new folks and the old folks, thank you for your service. And I look forward to calling in for my 3 minutes of public comment and then leaving after that. So thank you.
On this side? Alderman Herrick Gathright.
I'm like Alderman Cleaver said, it's kind of bittersweet, but it's been really a pleasure being a part of this team in this chamber. And I thank you for the advice that a lot of you have given me in different situations. I thank you for your expertise in a lot, and particularly you, Alderman Dow and Alderman Clee and our president. I listen to a lot that goes on in different committees and your comments and how you care about the city and think of ways to make it better and to do things differently. So I appreciate that very much, because even, 4 years ago, when I came into the chamber, I was new at this. Even though I'm at the State House, there is still a difference in working in the city versus at the state level. But I appreciate all that everyone has done, and your great staff. I mean, what can I say? The staff here in the chamber, as well as the staff in the city, and how many people I've called at different times and how they return calls right away, and even in issues when I had with my constituents, and how they've helped me to work that out as well. So I'm appreciative in the fact that, number one, that I sat in this chamber, and I really am, and the fact that also that I'm leaving the chamber. But it's been really good. It's been a good experience, a great experience, and I am truly fortunate that I had such great people to work with around this shoe hall. Thank you.
Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to thank you all. Somebody called you dynamic. There is no question. This is a dynamic bunch. 4 years went by in a blink. So many interesting things that we did, so many important things that we did for the whole city and for Ward 1. And I'm so proud to have been part of this. I would have liked to have stayed. I won't run again. This contest was really tough on me. And I hope the contest isn't repeated in other parts of the city. It wasn't happy. But I'd like to thank the city clerk for her managing the recount, for the board's willingness to come in on a beautiful sunny day, and for all the folks that handled the ballots and those that observed. We knew it wasn't going to change the numbers in the election, but many people in New Hampshire seem to think that there's something wrong with elections in our city, in our state. And we proved it once again that it's not a problem at all. The City Clerk Lovering proved again that she and her team of poll workers are professional and above reproach, and they honor us every time with their service. So this means I have to say goodbye to driving out in snowstorms, to begging DPW administrator for yet another favor for a constituent. I'll be no more reading maps to find out where the sewer line runs, and I won't be receiving mean emails or be sworn at on phone messages. But it doesn't mean I'm going away. If you need me, I'm still here, and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say goodbye to Alderwoman Karen. I first met Alderwoman Karen when I was in high school, and she was working at the Park Recreation Department for a guy named Ed Lee, I think his name was.
Right, Lee.
And they hired me to be the supervisor at the ice rink at Textile Field, which is now on Lead Street, now Veterans Field, I think. You know, to the other fateful departing, all the people, I want to say goodbye to you. And I couldn't help but notice that I'm the sole surviving member of this side of the chamber. So, thank you. Good luck to you.
Alderwoman Lowe.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the residents of Ward 6 for the honor and the privilege of serving them for these last 2 years. And also to those of you who contacted me and provided me with your sentiments regarding legislation that I was going to be voting on. I thank you very much for taking the time. I needed your input, and I appreciated that you reached out to me. I also want to thank the wonderful staff members who have provided time and patience to teach me so much. There are so many of them, and we do have really great staff here at City Hall. In closing, I've enjoyed working with all of you. This has been a really wonderful experience for me. And finally, in closing, I want to say that I want to offer my condolences to a neighbor. My close neighbor, Ben Beals, passed a week or so ago, and he was just a wonderful addition, member of our neighborhood, and I send my condolences to his wife, Jean Boyer. Thank you all, and have a wonderful New Year.
So thank you. For my remarks this evening, I would like to personally thank the outgoing alderman. And as Alderman Cleaver said, it's bittersweet. You know, you've all done such a good job. This is, in my 20-plus years on the board, one of the best boards I've worked with. Really dedicated people, very caring. And, you know, mostly we can agree to disagree, and that's okay. I appreciate you all for that. So just have a little something, Mayor and I, for the outgoing alderman. So for Alderman Karen.
It's a bill.
It's a bill, yeah. Hey, on your way out the door. Thank you very much for your dedication to the city, not just to this board, but to the city for most of your life. Thank you so very much for everything you've done.
I appreciate
Well, that's okay. I'll bring in some candy, but you know, I consider you a friend, and I appreciate everything you've done for the city. You're a wonderful person.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And next we have Alderman Tenza.
Get the candy.
Alderman Tenza, thank you so much for everything you've done for the city. But we appreciate everything you've done, Alderman Tenza. We'll miss you tremendously on the board. You've been a great alderman, and consider you a good friend. Thank you so much, Alderman Tenza. Alderwoman Lou.
Thank you.
appreciate everything you've done and wish you well and everything you continue to do. Thank you very much. Alderman Schmidt.
Don't give me one.
Thank you. Alderman Schmidt, we appreciate your work. We appreciate your dedication to Ward 1. It's constituents. You've been a great alderman.
Thank you.
Alderman Laws, are you still with us, Alderman Laws?
I'd turn on my camera, but you don't want to see what I'm wearing.
I appreciate you, Alderman Laws, and I respect the fact that you're a new dad and you've got a lot on your plate. But you've been a good alderman and I think a good friend to everyone here on the board. We really appreciate everything you've done and hope to see you back when that little one gets a little bigger.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What do you think? Maybe you'll come back?
He's like, no problem.
And to Alderman Cleaver. Alderman Cleaver, you are a true gentleman in the best way. You've done a lot of great things for Ward 8. We've really missed your attendance here, but are always happy to see your smiling face and happy you've been able to join us via Zoom. We hope that you do well, and we definitely miss you. So thank you for everything, Alderman Cleaver. Alderman Cleaver. We will truly miss you. Alderman Harry Gathright. Thank you for everything. You've been a great alderman. You've been great for Ward 9. I think between your state rep and your being an alderman, you've done a lot for this city, a lot of good things. So, and I consider you a friend as well. I hope we stay in touch, and I hope we still see you in the audience. Yes. Keeping us on our toes, right? Making sure we're still doing the right thing. Thank you. Okay. Possible non-public session.
Unneeded.
Okay, unneeded.
It's not needed? Not needed. You took care of it already.
We did take care of it. Okay, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. With regret, after serving with such a wonderful board, I so moved that the December 28, 2021 meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
The motion is to adjourn. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes, for the last time.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Only because Alderman Karen wants to escape, yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Thank you, everyone. I love you. Yes.
Alderman Cleaver.
Yes, thank you.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Yes, we love you too.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
We have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
And we are adjourned at 11:03 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Happy New Year. Bye.